Welcome back, friends. Lost Scarf here, and it's time for the newest Kirby's Dreamcast. Here we talk about everything Kirby, from the games to the anime to manga and more. Kirby's Dreamcast. This podcast can be found everywhere podcasts are hosted and on YouTube. The YouTube site has footage to watch if you want, and if you listen to us through Apple, give us a 5-star review. It helps us a heck of a lot. If you want to give us feedback, message me at Kirby Dreamcast on Twitter or in the comments of the YouTube side. Today we're going over Kirby's Dream Land 3. This will be a big episode going over everything about the game. The YouTube side will have gameplay footage of commercials, box art, game manuals, our gameplay footage, and more. It's a lot of stuff that's going to be on this one, so watch the YouTube side will make me feel better about all the editing that's going to happen here. So some monthly news first. Firstly, things have been crazy due to family medical emergencies, but they've calmed down now and I was able to finally get this episode done. I'll be working on Kirby Super Star Stacker as soon as I can when we get done with this, so that it's out before the end of the year. I want to get at least 2 games out a year, so gotta get on that. It's August, so let's talk about Kirby merch that can be imported without too much trouble. I'll be mentioning all merch that came out since the last episode. So the last thing that came out was the new Meta Knight light novel, which I'm sure is hype as heck. So Kirby Pal Dulce Collection Volume 6 figures will be coming out this month, so look out for that. I had the first 2 or 3 volumes. I really wish I didn't miss out on 4 and 5, but it is what it is. Shame for me. But since I broke the streak, I don't want to get them now. That's weird, right? eBay, I guess, is the answer there. Takara Tomy will be releasing a Kirby-loving Liko-chan doll on September 14th. It's a cute doll, but this is more for Liko-chan fans who like Kirby, I think. Here's a big one. Kirby's Kittyland Poo 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 Market has officially announced their Summer 2024 campaign, and there's going to be a lot of new items such as limited products and special novelties, and the campaign began on August 9th, and there's a Scuba Kirby plush, and a really cute Waddle Dee with Kirby keychain where they're holding market items. So much good stuff. I want this stuff. I want it so bad. But here's the big one I really want. Yoshinoya has revealed their Kirby collection. This collection will feature items such as deliciously adorable figures, purchase bonus goods, and lottery prizes. The campaign will run from August 8th to September 30th. Yoshinoya does ramen bowls, so it's cool to see a bunch of ramen Kirby figures and bowls. I am tempted to buy some. When they say, break out the fine china, I've been whipping these out. By the way, Japanese Twitter is going crazy for these bowls. I am so jealous. There's such amazing fan art too, and everyone's just putting pictures of them buying these things. I need to find an importer for this. The easy guys are not doing it, so I have to look more in depth for an importer to let me do this. Then there's SK Japan, and they're putting out a Waddle Dee with the spear plush. There's the Happy Morning large Kirby plush as well, which is him holding a fork and a spoon, and he's happy. He's got a little kerchief around his neck for eating, and it's just so cute. And then there's still the summer plushes that came out earlier. Oh, it's so cute. I really want these. I might have to get these. It's going to cost me a pretty penny, but I might have to get them. And as always, there's a ton of new Kirby charms, bags, jewelry, and stickers on the Japan-only side. You can get a private importer for stuff like that, but again, I'm only mentioning the easy-to-import stuff that you can get through like iTie or Mecha, things like that. Now, since this is the August episode, happy birthday month to Kirby Tilt and Tumble in Japan, Kirby Mass Attack in Japan, Kirby's Dream Land, the original in the US. I got it for my birthday so long ago, so yep, my birthday's this month as well. Kirby Fighters Deluxe, and Dedede's Drum Dash for the US. Lastly, Dream Buffet came out for the world on this month as well, so happy birthday to that. Still a fun game, but it is a pretty, you eventually get bored of it. I still haven't 100%ed it. I have to do that when we have to get there in like 10 or so years, so I can cover that game for this podcast. So the goal of the gaming episodes is to tell you about every detail I can find about the games inside and out. But sometimes there are gaps. Like some previous episodes had tie-in things like comics or music, but I didn't know about them at the time. Like Kirby's Adventure music CD, or the different manga for some of the games. One last thing to note is that all information was found through my own discoveries, or through websites like the wikis like WeKirby, Rainbow Resort, and Kirby Fandom, and websites interviewing HAL staff about their games, and sites that dug into the game files like the Cutting Room Floor are used as well, for any facts I never knew. So credit to them right here. So with all that set, let's go over the order of this episode. Similar to how we've done previous episodes, we'll be covering Kirby's Dream Land 3 in sections. So first we'll talk about the status of HAL as a company since the last game. Second, background in the making of Kirby's Dream Land 3 if we can have any information there. Third, advertising and tie-ins for Kirby's Dream Land 3. Fourth, how well did it sell? Fifth, the box art and game manual. Sixth, the game itself, and I'll try to weave the game into a big story about Kirby because I like doing that. Seventh, any lasting, interesting facts or glitches left to mention. 8, the credits and interesting facts about the staff. And lastly, my reflection on the game and where I think it ranks up with all the games we've previously covered. That last section is going to be interesting because I have opinions about this game for sure, and not everyone is going to be happy about where this game lands for me. So sections 1 and 2 are going to be a bit mixed up because it's a really weird point for HAL in its game development here. So how has HAL been since Kirby's Star Stacker, up to the release of Kirby's Dream Land 3? Star Stacker released on the 25th of January 1997 in Japan, while Dream Land 3 came out in North America on November 27th, 1997, and March 27th, 1998 in Japan. So Kirby Superstar came out March 21st, 1996. So 2 years after Superstar and 1 year after Star Stacker, Kirby's Dream Land 3 happened. But 1 month before that release was Kirby Superstar Stacker coming out. So it's a big complicated mess. It sounded really confusing, I bet. So let's talk about these weird release orders first. Why did Kirby's Dream Land 3 release in North America first? And why did Superstar Stacker release a month before Dream Land 3 released in Japan? That's some weird staggering there. So I did a lot of digging, but I don't have any contacts in the industry, so I can only theorize why. In the US, Kirby's Dream Land 3 is the last US NES game release, and it is the 7th last in Japan as well. So I think they were just getting the games out before they were officially killing off the SNES. That's what's happening there. They had these games in development, and they just needed to just get them out already. For the US, this is because the US was moving on, because Nintendo 64 came out on June 23rd, 1996 in Japan, and September 29th, 1996 in the US. Which means Kirby's Dream Land 3 released in the US more than a year after the 64 came out. Same thing for Japan, but even longer. If we assume Shimomura has been working on this game since Dream Land 2, which came out March 21st, 1995, Shimomura had at most 2 to 2.5 years of development time to work on Dream Land 3. So that was more than enough time to make it, since Sakurai took 2.5 years to do the same thing with Superstar 2 years prior, and I'm sure his work was very useful for reference. But here's the thing, Shimomura also worked on Superstar as well as a mapper, so I don't know how much that took away, and that makes things complicated if he was actually having even less time to work on it, because Superstar came out right before the 64, so it's crazy what was going on with Shimomura and development of this game for sure. So they finished making this game at some point, then they rushed localization for the North American version first, and that potentially explains why there's a spelling error on the box art itself. Shimomura finishes this and moves on to work on his Kirby 64 project next, which is great for him because I'm sure he wanted to work on that, but that'll take another 2 years to come out, so he has 2 years to make Kirby 64, which is impressive turnover time when you think about it, because 64 is a whole different beast. And during all this time, Sakurai is going to be working on Super Smash Bros. For the 64, and as I mentioned earlier, and during this time as well, Kirby Superstar Stacker is being worked on as a remake of the Game Boy game, Kirby Star Stacker, with the same staff, so holy crap, there's a lot going on here. It just feels like, yeah, they were just carting some stuff out before the SNES died. Very interesting, and unfortunate at the same time. Also considering, like, Star Stacker doesn't even have an English translation. When we cover that game, it's going to be over fan translations of that game. Now for HAL itself, during this time HAL is still being led by Satoru Iwata, and it is paying off its 1.5 billion yen debt to Nintendo. And around this time the debt is completed, and I theorize this is why HAL changes their logo from HAL Ken to HAL Labs with the dog and the 3 eggs. HAL used the HAL Ken logo during its time indebted to Nintendo, and Kirby's Dream Land 3 was the last game to use the logo just before the debt was paid. If you want a full history of HAL falling into debt, refer to the Kirby's Dream Land episode, because I go deep on everything up to Kirby's Dream Land there. One last thing that's interesting about Kirby's Dream Land 3 is, since it's the last release on SNES, it utilizes the SH1 chip for greater performance. Considering the interesting art style used in this game and number of things going on at once, that chip was definitely doing its job well. Section 3. Advertising for Kirby's Dream Land 3. None exists. That's right, there's nothing. This is likely because the game came out so late in the SNES's life cycle, and the fact the N64 had been out for over a year already. Kirby's Dream Land 3 was sent out to just recover whatever development profits they could get. That's about it. Shimomura and staff must have felt frustrated, there's no other way around that. Good thing they came back harder with Kirby 64 though. Now Section 4, how well did it sell? 76,000 copies in Japan and unknown in the US. Yep, that's probably very frustrating. Kirby Dream Land 3 barely did better than Star Stacker. That is a very big low. It would not be the lowest selling Kirby game of all time or second, but it definitely comes close. But it definitely is the lowest selling mainline Kirby game for sure. Now Section 5, Box Art and Game Manual. The Japanese box art is just Kirby and Gooey on the front, but on the back it shows all of Kirby's animal friends, new and old. They even have their names there, which are of course Rick, Kind, Coo, Choo Choo, Nago, and Pitch. For the US side, we get the rare, not angry Kirby. It's just the same Kirby as the Japanese box art, but they added more characters so you get enticed by some of his animal friends. All 6 of them are there. And Wispy for some reason. Wispy's always there. Imagine Wispy being an ally, that would be so wild. I just realized most of the box arts between US and Japan are similar or have most of the same assets, We also don't have Angry Kirby yet for some reason. I falsely remembered Angry Kirby being older, but that doesn't actually show up until Kirby's Air Ride. So on the back of the US box, it shows game screens and mentions that you can do 2-player co-op, 6 different animal friends, 48 different abilities because of the combinations of course, a bunch of mini games, and that it is battery powered so it can handle 3 different games file saves. I didn't know it needed to have a battery for that. That's crazy. The back of the box says, Dreamland's in trouble again. Kirby's back for more action in the latest chapter of the Dreamland saga. This time though, Kirby has more help than he knows what to do with. In addition to his old pals Rick the hamster, Coo the owl, and Kind the fish, there are 3 new friends to assist Kirby, not to mention Gooey, his blobby little sidekick. With all those friends, 2-player simultaneous play, and many other helpful surprises, Kirby should have no trouble saving Dreamland again, right? Not if Kind Dedede has anything to say about it. Yeah, so there are spelling errors and grammar errors here and there, and you could hear some of them as I said them. If you look at the image with the back of the box, there's latest is lates, there's bad grammar with though. Where's the other ones? Oh, Kind instead of King Dedede. And, yeah, those are it. So yeah, what the heck? They didn't even do a spell check before they released this. That's crazy. Now for the game manual. It's an amazing manual for sure. It has great illustrations and tells the story. On the second page, you get a great image of Kirby and his friends, and then we get the story, and here's what it says. Kirby, our hero, makes his home in Dreamland, which is located on Popstar. Popstar is a small, peaceful planet at the edge of a vast universe. One day, Kirby and Gooey went fishing. Birds were singing, the sun was shining. It was such a nice day that they felt more like napping than fishing. We get an image of Kirby and Gooey fishing. As Kirby and Gooey relaxed, they noticed a black, cloud-like object appear in the Popstar sky. We get an image of a big black ball destroying one of Popstar's rings as it comes towards Popstar. The black object started to spit out small clouds. These clouds were scattered everywhere. We get an image of dark matter spreading in the sky. Just then, Q appeared, looking panicked. "Hurry, Kirby," he said. "Popstar's in big trouble." We get an image of a purple Q talking to Kirby, which is funny because he's gray in this one. The small clouds took control of King Dedede and his minions. They started to do terrible things. We get an image of King Dedede and Waddle Dee being controlled. King Dedede is in a sleepy state. Now Kirby and his friends have left to get rid of these strange clouds and save Popstar. We get an image of Kirby and his friends, and Q is gray in this image. So wow, the game manual gives away Gooey's identity. So next 2 pages are Kirby and Gooey since they're players 1 and 2. Kirby's page says, "Hi, I'm Kirby, Popstar is in big trouble. Gooey and I are going to get to the bottom of this. Wish us luck." While Gooey's page says, "Gooey is Kirby's good friend. While he's made of the same stuff as dark matter," while they mention that, he doesn't have an evil spirit. The manual mentions he can be player 2 or controlled by the CPU. Gooey being a dark matter isn't revealed until the end of the game, but wow, the book reveals it right there. That is wild to me. The next 2 pages are how Kirby controls, and it's a lot of classic Kirby images. The 2 pages after that explain how Gooey works, and it's cute how silly Gooey always is in there. The book also explains that Gooey can copy like Kirby, but he can only lick up one enemy at a time, unlike Kirby who can suck up groups. Also that Gooey can use his tongue to attack underwater like normal, while Kirby spits out water bullet bubbles. Then we see an explanation on copy ability and that there's 8 powers this time, so 8 times 6, 48. And something nice is it also gives profiles of the animal friends, so let's read those too. Kirby's friends. Select a friend who fits the situation. Remember these 3? Rick. On the ground, Rick is the best. He won't slide on ice, hop on Rick and get cruising. Kind. Underwater, Kind can get the job done. Strong currents are no problem. Kind's a great swimmer. Q. In the air, it's Q to the rescue. Storms and strong winds are a piece of cake. Q can fly like an eagle. I like that the manual hints at how useful each friend is. Then there's Kirby's new friends. Nago can perform a triple jump, hop on me. Choo Choo, I can stick on the ceilings. I can also fly, but not very far. Pitch, don't forget me. I can make some copied abilities better. This is a really good game manual as it explains that the Heart Star is important to stopping dark matter, and that there will be different objectives to do that at each stage to get them. It's good that's in the game manual because I do know some kids had no idea what the heck these Heart Stars were about, so that's helpful. The book then explains how all the minigames and goal games work, and I wish it was explained in-game, but they're pretty intuitive eventually. Near the end of the book we get level and boss descriptions, so level 1, Grassland, boss Wispy Woods. In the wild nature of Grassland, master the basic operations of the game while taking in the scenery. Level 2, Ripplefield, boss Acro the Whale, a small island floating on a large ocean. Kirby's not the best swimmer, but don't give up. Level 3, Sand Canyon, boss Raccoon and Fox. This is one big sandbox, don't faint from the heat. Level 4, Cloudy Park. You'll find caves and castles made of clouds. Watch out for the strong winds. Level 5, Iceberg. It's cold. Don't give up, you're almost at the end. And the last page is each animal friend giving a tip. So this is actually a very good manual. It's very thorough, explains a lot, and that's good. You want game manuals that give you a lot of information, so I'm happy with that. Alright, here we're at Section 6, the game and story. So we're going to do this in the game proper now. I'm going to tell you the entire story of the game with gameplay footage. There'll be some creative license as I'll be using my personal gameplay to go through the whole game. So first we see Halken, then the opening of the game. There's stars in the sky and some big black thing is flying through it, heading towards Popstar. On Popstar, Kirby and Gooey are just enjoying some fishing, and Kirby can sense something is off, and the giant black mass punches through Popstar's rings and lands on the planet. The black mass reaches out towards a tree, a whale, a young painter girl, and King Dedede. The mass reaches out everywhere and eventually gets noticed by Kirby while Gooey enjoys eating a fish. Then Nago the cat, Rick the hamster, Choo Choo the octopus, Coo the owl, Pitch the bird, and Kind the sunfish realize this is a big threat and head towards Kirby and Gooey. The group lines up and splits up to search for answers. Kirby and Gooey first head to the grassland, which is where Kirby first ventured in Dreamland 2 as well. We're treated to a familiar scene, Kirby with the parasol walking up to Rick, but unlike last time, Choo Choo runs up and grabs Kirby and they leave together. Rick is crestfallen when he notices Choo Choo steals his friend away. Choo Choo then drops off Kirby because she just wanted to hang out with Kirby and Gooey before heading off to start her investigation in another part of the grassland. In the first area, Kirby and Gooey find themselves in a big grassy area full of flowers, and they see King Dedede's armies out in full force. Assuming King Dedede is up to no good again, Kirby and Gooey immediately engage the first Waddle Dees they see in combat. The Waddle Dees try to explain they're looking for clues too, but they can't be heard over Kirby's vacuum attacks. Next, Kirby sucks up Sir Kibble to gain the cutter ability before he can say anything either. Same goes for the Cappies and other soldiers in King Dedede's army. Witnessing these acts of war, the rest of King Dedede's army learns what happened and assume Kirby won't listen to reason like last time King Dedede was acting funny. I am referencing Dreamland 2 here because King Dedede was also controlled there. Eventually, Kirby finds Nago the cat and Rick the hamster, and they're resting. Gooey plays with Nago a bit and Kirby plays with Rick. After testing Cutter with each, Kirby decides to take Rick with him. Because with Nago they can do a cool upward blast, but with Rick they can throw his face around, which is kinda weird. Together, this trio rampage across the first grassland area and gather stars they find as they look around. They eventually encounter a new member of King Dedede's army, Sasuke! He's a little round red guy who has a straw hat that he can use to float around. If you're a fan of Kirby Right Back at ya, they're in episode 13, Happy New Year. In that one, they come very close to killing Kirby, but Kirby kills them first with a swallow. Rick swallows Sasuke and gains the parasol ability, and we get the classic Kirby as a ball on a parasol attack. Eventually, Gooey also gets a parasol to join the fun. They then encounter Sparky and Bronobert. Kirby sucks up Sparky to get electric powers, and combined with Rick, they do a beam kind of attack. The trio then encounter Poppy Bros Jr., who is the first to get a word in. Poppy Bros Jr. is a mischievous little guy. He convinces Kirby that the flowers here are bad guys, so Kirby, with Rick and Gooey, crushes a bunch of them. They then find an invincibility candy and run wild from the sugar rush and crush everything in their wake, including Poppy Bros Jr.'s and flowers. After they calm down from all the sugar, they encounter a sad flower. The flower says they're just peace-loving tulips, and Kirby feels bad. He naively believed Poppy Bros Jr. So the tulip asks them to please go back and apologize to their friends. It should make them feel better. So Kirby goes through the first area again, but brings Nago this time. Maybe with a fresh face the flowers will not feel so alarmed. They suck up Sasuke on the way and use the parasol ability like a pogo stick. Later they get the electric ability from Sparky, and Nago makes a bunch of friction sparks off Kirby. Kirby, Nago, and Gooey then crush every Poppy Bros Jr. they find as punishment while apologizing to the flowers. Eventually they make their way back to the big red tulip, and she thanks them from the bottom of her heart, and this manifests into a heart star. Kirby gazes up at it in wonder, and then grabs it. Something tells him this is important. The trio then move on to the second area, and they encounter King Dedede's recon unit, Keki, as she flies through the air. She's a little girl with cat ears flying on a broomstick, clearly a reference to Kiki's Delivery Service, a Studio Ghibli film about a young witch who makes deliveries. Gooey knocks her down and gains the clean ability from absorbing her. This allows Gooey to clean the area, violently. They also encounter Rocky, and Kirby absorbs them for the rock ability. Nago slams Rock Kirby into the ground to scare lots of King Dedede's army, leaving only the brave or the most foolish to try to tangle with them. Then they get the clean ability too, and Nago can't help but use Kirby to clean the ground. But eventually Kirby gets free, and they encounter another new member of King Dedede's army, the fire creature named Bobo. He's just a walking flame. Kirby sucks them up and gains the fire ability, and with that power, Nago's able to get Kirby to shoot out fire waves. Then they find Choo Choo and Pitch, who are resting from their search of the area. Kirby teams up with Choo Choo, and they learn they can kind of make a hot air balloon combination. While with Pitch, Kirby's able to wield Pitch like a homing fireball. Kirby chooses to team up with Choo Choo, and they move on. Then they encounter Bouncy T and dispatch them like all the other army members. The trio then finds a hidden door, and inside, Moochie Moochie was hiding. He's a pretty shy guy, but Choo Choo reassures them they're friends as she pats them on the head. Mochi Mochi blushes and looks happy. The trio then moves on. Gooey then teams up with Choo Choo and she swings him around a bunch as he uses the rock ability, while Kirby deals with another new enemy that looks really weird. Popon! This green growing wiggler enemy is odd, but Kirby gets over how weird they look and takes them down. Popon was in the Kirby's Right Back at Ya anime episode 11, The Big Taste Test. Kirby horribly kills them by frying them with the sun. Choo Choo eventually gets dizzy from spinning Gooey around and has to rest while Kirby and Gooey move on. In the next area, they encounter two more new enemies, Ruff the Warthog and Tick. Ruff immediately attacks Kirby and he dodges using the rock ability. Immediately after, they run into a bunch of ticks after that, and they look innocent, but Gooey knows better and he licks one up. So Kirby sucks one up too and they gain the spike ability. They both basically become sea urchins. After poking their way through a bunch of the army, Kirby decides to burn his way across the area, and the ticks show their true mean face and try to impale Kirby and Gooey. How scary! After blazing through a couple of Ruffs, Kirby finds Mochi Mochi, who's still in a good mood thanks to Choo Choo. This manifests into a heart star and Kirby collects it and moves on to the third area. By the way, the Ruff showed up in the Kirby anime with their child Nelly in episode 5 of the anime named Beware Wispy Woods. At first, in the third area, Kirby dodges Ruffs, Sparkies, and Rockies. Eventually, Kirby finds Ku and Kine. With the fire ability, Kine is able to help Kirby shoot out giant puffs of fire, while with Ku, they're able to do fire dive bombs. Kirby decides to see what they can do with the electric ability before choosing the who to take. With Kine, they can shine a light bulb and break it to use the bulb as a stabbing tool. Like they can shank with it, it's pretty scary. Kirby likes this so much they don't even check Ku and run off. Kirby with Kine tears their way through the army for a while, and it's very horrible for the army. They then encounter Ruffs being ridden by Waddle Dees, but they're no match for this combo either, so it's a cute combo to look at. Next they climb some mountains, and at the top, Gooey encounters Pasara, which is a weird cloud creature that splits into three. They then enter the mountain peak and meet Pitcher Man, who wants to play a game. He'll throw a Gordo really fast, and they have to tell him which Gordo he threw. First he throws a normal Gordo, which was easy enough to identify. Then he threw another normal Gordo, and lastly a baby Gordo with little eyes. Pitcher Man becomes very happy with their skills, and the trio move on. Kine then gets tired and leaves just before Kirby and Gooey have to race a team of Ruffs being led by Waddle Dee, who falls off his mount and falls behind. Kirby then eats all four Ruffs and then moves on. In the next area, Kirby and Gooey have to run from a familiar enemy, Shotzos and their big cannonballs. But they make it through and meet Pitcher Man, who was so happy from earlier, it manifests a heart star for them to collect. They grab it and then move on. Next in level 4, Kirby and Gooey climb up a mountain and eat some Rockies and boulder around for a while. But then they see a cloud. But it's not just any cloud, it's Loud the Cloud. And Kirby and Gooey think their name is silly. This makes them cry rain at them. This will be Loud's only appearance in the entire Kirby universe, meaning Kirby and Gooey were so mean about their name, they never returned for another game. They get so distracted by Loud that Kirby doesn't notice Dekabu and gets shocked when they appear. Dekabu is Kabu's really big brother, and wow, they're big. Dekabu still remembers what Kirby did to them in Block Ball, so they're being pretty mean here as well. Gooey and Kirby start heading into a cave, and Kirby eats the first furry thing he sees without thinking. It's a poor babut. Yeah, they're called babuts, which is basically a bat. This is their first appearance, and they don't appreciate Kirby sucking them up so quickly and easily. Inside the cave, they fall into an aquifer and get attacked by many bats. And a Kapar! Well, I'm not actually sure about attacked by Kapar. He was minding his own business, but Kirby rushed up and sucked him up to gain the cutter ability anyway. This is also Kapar's first time running to Kirby, and Kapar just looks like a mini Kappa, and it's pretty cute. Deeper inside the cave, Kirby finds Choo Choo and tests out Cutter with Choo Choo, and he waves her around like a blade. Kirby doesn't even test with Nago. The trio then finds some Zebon. They look tasty, but instead of Kirby sucking them up, they suck up Kirby and launch him away. Zebon was also in Kirby's Right Back at Ya episode 11, The Big Taste Test. The trio get launched into an invincible candy, and together they all go on a sugar rush rampage. Then they find an area that needs rock ability to get through, and luckily Gooey had that. This path leads into a battle with Bobu, which is a bigger Bobo. Choo Choo leaves to take a break, so it's Kirby and Gooey versus Bobu, who dashes hard and fast at Kirby, but ends up crashing into the walls repeatedly as Kirby dodges them. And then Kirby uses the embers that bounce off of them to hit them with. So yeah, Bobu's a very simple boss fight. He dashes into walls, crashes into them, then Kirby can use the bounce off to hurt Bobu. It's a pretty boring fight, honestly. Very monotonous. After defeating Bobu, the pair encounter Goku, who says he got lost. Kirby sucks them up to keep them safe, and they all move on. Even deeper in the cave, they for the first time encounter Oro, which is a weird yellow blob that pops up to say hi at Kirby. They keep doing it and getting in Kirby's way, who loses patience and runs them over because he's got places to be. Sometimes Kirby ain't got time for that. He's got to save the world, probably. Then Kirby runs afoul of some glunks hanging on the ceiling. He hasn't seen them since his big superstar adventures, and they're as mean as ever as they rain down many blasts at Kirby. After dealing with a bunch of glunks and almost getting crushed by big boulders, there's then lots of climbing out of the cave by overcoming some Oros, Gordos, and big boulders. Kirby and Gooey lastly run into Chao. They remember her because they rescued her from a bag similar to the one Gooey was in back in Dreamland 2. She thanks them for finding her friend Goku, and her happiness makes a heart star for them to take. So, in the US version, it's a girl Gooey that you find in a bag to get 100% in Dreamland 2, but in the Japanese version, it's her. So if you're playing the US version, she's just some character you helped out, but if you play the Japanese version, then you know who she is. You know she's someone you rescued in a previous game. And she herself is a cameo to another thing. In level 5, Kirby and Gooey enter the woods and find broom hatters attempting to clean the forest. Those poor sods. Kirby sucks one up to try to help with the cleaning ability. While there, they encounter eggs that contain mean exploding propeller creatures. Kirby first encountered them in Dreamland 2 and again later in Block Ball. They have various versions of themselves, but they're all mean. Kirby needed to be careful around these meanies, and during the journey, the pair encounter rolling log bridges. These are weird, Kirby thought, while Gooey thought they were fine. The pair then found Kine and Ku on some rolling logs. Sensing he needed him, Kirby hopped onto Kine's mouth, and they headed out. With the cleaning ability, Kirby was able to make a plunger while holding inside Kine. That's weird. They also found Nago and Rick, but Kirby knew Kine was the only one he needed. Then they found the plunger could be used to stick an enemy and pushed him into another enemy. King Dedede's army was powerless into stopping the powerful plunger. Then Kirby found some ticks and decided to see what he could do with Kine with the needle ability. Unfortunately for Kine, this power manifested as Kirby doing needle while inside Kine. Fortunately, Kine is a very tough fish. After getting through a trial of rolling logs, the trio encountered Mine. She was happy to see Kine, so she manifested a heart star. Kirby took the heart star and left Kine with his, according to the 20th Anniversary Encyclopedia, wife. That's right, Kine has a wife. By the way this is pronounced is Kine and Mine, so I should have said Kine and mine, but I think it's just funny that I did that wrong there. But yeah, Kine's got a wife, guys. Kine's got a wife. He moves on from Tiff and finds a wife. That's what happens. Good for Kine. Good for Mine. In the 6th level, Kirby and Gooey venture deeper into the forest and first encounter Takezo, another King Dedede's minions, and this one gives Needle. Kirby's been dealing with these guys since his first big adventure years ago. Kirby eventually encounters a new foe, though, Como the Spider. And they don't give Spider ability yet, unfortunately. They hang from the trees and swing down to attack Kirby, but as long as Kirby stays low, he's good. Kirby then finds Rick and Choo-Choo and goes with Rick since it's been a while. They grab the Needle ability and Rick sprouts spikes on his back. The trio then enter a giant tree where they encounter some Bobos, who somehow haven't burned down the tree and they grab their ability. Now Rick breathes fire, which is perfect because they encounter a giant spider named Mario for the first time, and they definitely require fire to deal with that. Kirby senses that if he ate a Mario, it would hurt him, by the way. Inside the giant tree, the trio see a weird triangle shape. They don't know what it's about, so they don't pursue it and leave the tree. Outside the tree, the trio encounter Yaban, a savage archer who wants them to leave the forest. The trio refuse and they face off. Yaban kind of looks like Tough from the anime, but bigger and with a bow and a round body. They then get the cleaning ability with Rick and deal with Yaban as well. Then they find Nago and Ku and they play with them for a while before giving Rick a break and taking Ku along for a while. With Ku, they're able to easily fly around most problems. But then they end up in the treetops and need to head down. Kirby with Ku and the cleaning ability does a funny feather duster attack, by the way. But then they grab a parasol and descend while spinning and avoiding scary tree worms called Apollos. They spin around the trees and somehow don't break them. They're really creepy, by the way. Like, Kirby does not like what he's looking at all. But fortunately for him, he'll only encounter them one more time in this game and never again, anywhere else ever again. After they finish their descent, they head through more forest and grab the rock ability from a Rocky, and with that, Kirby can become a heavyweight with Ku and crush enemies. They try to use it against everything on the way out. Then at the exit, they encounter a sad clown named Pierre. He lost his shapes while running from Mario in the big tree. Kirby realizes that must have been the shape he saw, and he learns there's 3 of them. Kirby with Gooey then venture back into the big tree and get the shapes and bring them back to Pierre, who happily juggles them. This leads to the manifestation of a heart star, and Kirby takes it. After a lot of traveling, everyone pinpoints a lot of darkness in a specific spot in the woods. So Kirby, Nago, and Gooey venture deeper into the grasslands and encounter Wispy Woods. Well, he seems normal enough, but Kirby feels something's off, and Gooey senses something familiar. Kirby and Nago fire off fire waves, and Wispy defends himself with the usual fruit and air attacks. Eventually, Wispy gets fed up and becomes very scary and angry looking, and uproots himself, and he chases the trio while spitting rotten fruit at them. Eventually, Wispy Woods is defeated, and the heart stars Kirby collected come together to purify the forest. Wispy is back to normal again, and Kirby and friends do a dance and move on. Everyone heads to Ripplefield to investigate. They can all sense a darkness there now too, but they can't figure out where yet. Upon arriving in Ripple Field, Kirby looks at the ocean with Choo-Choo, and then Kind jumps out of the water and grabs Kirby. Then Choo-Choo tries to grab him out of Kind's mouth, but Kind sucks him back in. This goes for a bit until Kind can keep his mouth shut, and this angers Choo-Choo. Kind though smiles since he won. Everyone does enjoy spending time with Kirby after all, but after enough shenanigans, Kirby climbs out and he takes Gooey and Naga with him while the others look elsewhere. In the first level, they find themselves on some very colorful islands. Without the Fire Wave attack, they easily dispatch the Glunks, Waddle Dees, and Broom Hatters. Poor Broom Hatters, they're trying to clean a beach. Kirby gives Naga a break and heads further into the islands with Pitch. With the clean ability, Kirby's able to use Pitch as a water pitcher and throw cleaning water around to help the Broom Hatters with their cleaning. Eventually, Trio finds a seedling and use the water to help them grow into a cute purple tulip. They then find more seedlings and help them all grow too. Eventually, they water all the seedlings they find and rush through the islands, eventually finding an invincibility candy and going nuts from the sugar rush. Lastly, they find a representative purple tulip named Kamuribana, and they're happy to see them and then they manifest a heart star. With a job well done, the trio then head into the second area of the Ripple Field. The first thing they run into is a Blipper who somehow got out of the water. Poor fella. They don't need goggles out of the water, at least. They then run into some Sasuke's and use their Parasol ability. Kirby and Pitch with Parasol is able to launch him like a golf ball. It's pretty cool. This really helps with taking out the weird exploding coconuts in the area. Kirby's always wary of those exploding coconuts ever since the first time. Kirby then gives Pitch a break and sees what Parasol does with Choo-Choo and Kind. With Kind, they pop a Parasol into the air, and with Choo-Choo, Kirby and Choo-Choo hold hands and spin around. It's really cute. Together, they find a Parasol creature who is just staring off into the space. They try to get his attention with their spinning and fireworks, but nothing happens. Unsure how to engage with him, the trio move on. Eventually, they find Rick and Koo and tell him about the Parasol creature. Rick knows the guy, and so together they head back to him. When they get back, Rick gets his attention by spinning Kirby on a Parasol, and this amuses the creature, and he smiles and says his name is Bakasa. Happy to find a new friend, the trio move on. Further ahead, they encounter some scary little red crabs called Connie, and immediately GTFO. They're very mean, and Kirby hopes this first encounter is the last encounter. It won't be. By the way, the Connie appears in episode 47 of the Kirby Right Back anime. That episode is called Pink Collar Blues in the US. Connie hurts Kirby with a mean pinch, and then they find Bakasa again, who is still happy, and he manifests a heart star. Yay for another one. The trio then move on to the third area. A little more with Connie. So, they're named Connie? In Japanese, Connie means crap, so it's such an on-the-nose name. Oh my god. In the third level, they encounter Waddle Dees rafting and Blippers in the water this time. Waddle Dees can't swim, so this was very smart of them, by the way. Then something really scary looms overhead and attacks. It's a Pacto, and it dives down to attack Kirby with its big gaping maw. A rare feeling for Kirby to see something trying to eat him, by the way. Fortunately, with Rick's help, he is able to deal with it. This is the first time Kirby encounters it, and unfortunately, he'll have to deal with this many more times. Pacto is best described as a big Ulpa with big teeth, and it likes to surprise attack from above. Since they're dealing with a lot of water, Rick tags in Kind, and this new trio continues forward. With the help of Cutter, they have a big blade attack, which is pretty cool. Grabbing Kind was apt because they eventually end up in the water and having to face a scary shark named Joe. Luckily, the Cutter makes short work of him. This is Kirby's first encounter with Joe. They're also in the Kirby's Right Back anime in multiple episodes, usually attacking King Dedede, which is great. Fortunately, Kirby only encounters Joe on this adventure. Sharks always be scary, after all. Then the trio encounters Elil, the eel, and Gordo's playing a game called Where's the Eel? Elil was an enemy last time Kirby saw them in Kirby's Dream Land 2, but they're too busy playing games to fight, so they challenge Kirby to a game. After 3 rounds of increasing difficulty, the trio are successful in guessing where Elil is, and they happily see the trio off. Even deeper in the water, the trio fights some Bobos, Glunks, and Joe the Shark again, and they then find Elil at the end, who was happy to see them and enjoyed the game earlier, and they manifest a heart star. Kirby grabs it and then moves on. In the fourth area, the trio encounters some armored warriors training under waterfalls at some water temple named Bakuset. These Bakuset knights have temporarily come to this part of Popstar to train and challenge Kirby. Their armor looks like clamshell armor, it's pretty interesting. The trio defeats one training with a broom and then get the cleaning ability. Then they dive down and use it to plunger another new enemy called Moni the Amenity, who only lives in certain waters. Underwater, they swim through some mazes and tag in Choo-Choo the octopus to aid in some swimming and give Kind a rest. With the cleaning ability, they're able to fly with a broomstick, and then they encounter Bobin the fish, another new enemy for Kirby to deal with that only shows up in this adventure. They easily deal with them since they're just a fish, but you never know sometimes. Next, Kirby and friends have to deal with falling boulders and a hard-to-deal-with enemy named Nido, an enemy that turns into a fake door. Kirby and Gooey repeatedly accidentally run into them, and it hurts. Eventually, they attack every door they see for a while. That's the kind of paranoia these Nidos create. Unfortunately for Kirby, he's going to run into more Nidos in the future. After finding the correct door, they do some climbing out of the temple and make their way to a door. While there, Kirby senses a presence that feels similar to himself. It's a Batamon! A creature that looks a lot like Kirby, but Kirby can't see them and just sense them. Then he comes to another room where Bakuset is training and he senses a sad presence. But Kirby can't find where it's coming from. After some searching, the trio move on. Choo-Choo then decides to stay behind to keep searching. On the way out of the water temple, they run into Squishy in the water. This squid has faced Kirby many times, but they still can't beat the pink puff. Really, Squishy's best chance at beating Kirby was in the avalanche battles. After avoiding more Pactos and Waddle Dee, Kirby and Gooey meet a large mama frog named Gamugale. She's looking for her son, Kogamugale. Kirby figures that must be the sad presence and he ventures back into the inside to find them. Choo-Choo tells Kirby where she thinks she can find the sun, and Kirby takes Kind with him while Choo-Choo rests. The trio find a hidden door as they climb up the temple. As they climb, they're greeted with a procession of Gordos. This can't bode well. And it doesn't, as they're immediately attacked by Captain Stitch, leader of the Gordos. He's a giant Gordo that is indestructible, except when he loses his spikes from ramming into walls, from attacking Kirby. He fights a lot like Bobu, but in 2 directions instead of just 1. He can also fire his spikes at Kirby, making him double what Bobu was as a threat. The last time Kirby fought this guy was in his last adventure with his animal friends. Captain Stitch also shows up in the Kirby anime pilot. Aside from one more fight in this adventure, Captain Stitch will learn his lesson and never bother Kirby ever again. After defeating Captain Stitch, the trio find Kogamugale, and Kind takes a rest, while Kirby and Gooey rush to return the boy to his mother. Her happiness manifests a heart star, and the pair take it and move on. In the next level, Kirby and Gooey encounter another colorful island full of water. As they swim around and get forced around by the current, they encounter lots of now familiar foes who just can't beat the mighty pair. In order to combat the rushing waters, Kind comes back to help Kirby swim around faster. Eventually, they find dry areas under the water with Kind's help, and they rampage through as they search for the way through. Eventually, they encounter a Galbo, which is a little red fire-breathing dino orb creature. Kirby adopts one of these in the 30th episode of Kirby Right Back anime, named Hatch Me If You Can. Kirby adopts one, and he gets murdered by another Galbo, so Kirby murders that Galbo extra hard. Kirby thinks the Galbo is cute, but Gooey knows better and eats it up. These Galbo could be dangerous. This is the first of many encounters with Galbo. After lots and lots and lots of splunking and using various powers to clear a path to keep Kind in the party, they find more currents for Kind to fight against, and the trio find Pitch deep in this maze of currents. Pitch is freaking out because he has no idea how to get out. Fortunately, Kind leaves to show them the way out off camera, and Kirby with Pitch and Gooey find their way through the maze. The trio eventually make it to the surface and find an invincibility candy and rampage around in their sugar rush, and they run into Pitch's mother! She came because she sensed her son was in trouble, but she's overjoyed to see him safe, and this creates a heart star. They take it and move on after Pitch hugs his mama. Happy Mother's Day! In the 6th level, the trio hop into the water and swim to the beach and face off against the scary Connies. They then find Nago and Rick and tag out Pitch for Nago to give Pitch a rest. They then have to deal with falling coconuts and Rockies. So many dangerous things overhead. But with Nago's help and Rock Kirby, everything gets crushed underfoot. Next, the trio deal with a Zebon maze that is an interesting idea that requires memorization that takes Kirby a while to figure out. After the maze, Nago takes a break and Kirby and Gooey navigate an obstacle course and eventually find a 5x5 Starbox puzzle. Kirby breaks them all at first, but wonders what he's supposed to do here. But then Kirby finds a rock formation shaped like a diamond and meets a guy named HB002 who is also diamond-shaped. So Gooey and Kirby break the blocks to make that shape. HB002 is happily impressed. By the way, HB0 is a reference to an easy level in Mario P-Cross, which is level B2, so that's quite the reference there. Kirby and Gooey then climb up a rough race course filled with Sasuke's, propellers, and many falling coconuts. But they make it and find HB002, who was so happy from earlier they generate a heart star and Kirby collects it. Kirby and friends then find the source of the darkness they're sensing. It's something inside a sea cave. Kirby and Gooey go in and find Acro the Orca. And they're on land? That's weird. Acro then bum rushes the pair and they dodge and he crashes into a wall, which generates a star for Kirby to use against Acro. This is a really tedious fight since that's the only attack Acro has, but eventually Kirby maintains the rhythm and dodge as well. And after Acro takes enough damage from ramming into walls against Kirby and Gooey, he dives into the water, and Kirby faces off with just bubbles. Acro backs up and launches attacks at them with his mouth, and Kirby in turn is able to bounce them back at Acro with bubble blasts. Acro then in a desperate attempt slams into the seawall to drop boulders on them. Meanwhile, Gooey licks up things to shoot at Acro. Eventually Acro was defeated, and thanks to the power of the Heart Stars, they're able to purify the area. With another job well done, Kirby and Gooey dance and warp stars out. By the way, Acro was actually going to be in Dreamland too, but that just didn't happen for some reason. Then everyone heads to the Sand Canyon, and there Kirby and Rick and Koo play catch while using Gooey as a ball. During this, Choo-Choo is admiring a flower. Kirby passes to Rick, and Rick casts a coup, but Q hits Gooey too hard and he crushes the flower. Choo-Choo gets mad at the others while Gooey's behind her. Gooey licks her back and she freaks out and punches Gooey so hard he's stuck to the wall. Riku and Kirby then become scared while Choo-Choo makes a sweet face to hide her embarrassment. After Gooey forms back into a blob and not a spot on the wall, Kirby and Gooey head into the cliffs over the sand canyon while the others spread out to look for clues. So in the first level, the pair start at the top of some cliffs with some pretty flowers in the background. They jump around and see a red tulip with a brown mushroom. The brown mushroom introduces himself as Gara Mazudake, while the red tulip says nothing. Gara Mazudake says the red tulips are actually invaders faking to be flowers, and they eat the mushrooms. Shocked, Kirby and Gooey go about crushing the red tulips, while moving to avoid harming the brown mushrooms. After they finish with all the red tulips, Kirby and Gooey continue forward. They enter a cave in the cliff and encounter a Poloff, which is a round rabbit creature. Kirby eats them up and they are yummy. This is the only Poloff that ever appears in front of Kirby, ever. I don't understand why it exists, but it's here. If Kirby lets them live, by the way, they would lead him to a secret door, but oh well, Kirby wanted food now, not later. The next cave gets real dangerous with Shatsos everywhere, and Oros on the ceiling, but they eventually get through it. Then they encounter a new enemy, Gonson, which is kind of like a Pokemon. It's a 3 rocks stacked together like a triangle and one has a face. Kirby and Gooey eat them for rock power. The pair then roll down the cave and crush lots of enemies. They then encounter Dogon, which looks like a caveman. He has a big club and a loincloth-looking outfit, and he's covered in lots of dirt. Kirby's never seen them before, but Kirby can easily swallow them and moves on. But then Kirby encounters another new enemy, Petaran, the flying mini pterodactyls. Kirby really is in the Stone Age, because this is the first time he's ever run into cavemen and flying dinosaurs. That's weird. But eventually Kirby and Gooey get through the swarms of each and make their way to the leader of the brown mushrooms, who is so happy their people are alive that they manifest a heart star for the pair to take. By the way, the Petaran will only show up again in Kirby 64, while Dogon will only appear in this game. They also show up in the Kirby's Right Back anime, episode 94, titled Cowardly Creature. In the second level, they move on to the Sand Canyon itself, and they first run into a Doka for the first time, which is a mole with a shovel, and they launch pieces of dirt at the pair. Kirby also encounters for the first time Boten, which are green creatures that live on top of cactuses that they blend in with, and Kirby gets hurt a few times from being surprised by them. Kirby then grabs the clean ability and decides to take Choo-Choo with him because flying around on a broomstick is pretty cool. Eventually the trio get in deeper and face more challenges, but nothing too serious. Then they find a secret door for a 1-up and pumps with Gooey's help, which is always nice to find. They then find a set of Bukaset's training and dispatch them with the flying broomstick. They then meet Oba-chan, the cleaning lady. She's a yellow ball person with red hands that hold a broom, and she has a cleaning hat. She asks Kirby for help cleaning some other rooms. By the way, Oba-chan means older woman in Japanese. So Kirby leaves Choo-Choo to help Oba-chan while he goes and cleans the rooms. Kirby cleans 2 rooms covered in dust while fighting a Dino and a Mario. Kirby then encounters more Bukaset's training and then climbs out of a sand cave to the surface. There on the surface, Kirby encounters a Wapod, which is a Genie Waddle Dee. It's kind of crazy. They're vapor Waddle Dees that live in vases, and that's just normal. It's really weird, and Kirby tries not to think about it. This is the first, but not the last time Kirby will encounter these weird Wapods. Kirby breaks the vases thinking it'll help them somehow, but he's just making them homeless. It's pretty bad. Kirby then runs into Oba-chan, who's so happy with Kirby's help that she manifests a heart star, and Kirby takes it and moves on to the base of the volcano. By the way, if it wasn't Chan but San, so Oba-san would be aunt, and then Oba-san would be grandmother, but Oba-chan makes it older woman. That's my understanding, at least, of how language works in Japanese. So level 3 has lots of enemies while Kirby descends into the volcano base. Kirby then encounters for the first time Gabon. Gabons are little purple guys who throw bones and wear skulls. In the Kirby Right Back anime, they appear in episode 46 titled Scare Tactics 2. Kirby burns him to death in the anime, by the way. It's a horrifying kill. Kirby is surprised by Gabons since bones aren't commonly used here. This new guy is kind of dangerous, Kirby thought, but eventually they make it through. Kirby then finds 3 doors with 3 animal friends. Kirby and Gooey test some combinations. Rock with Choo-Choo, has her swinging Rock Kirby around. Rock with Pitch is funny, because Kirby does a dive with Rock Pitch like he's a football player, which is just great. It's really like dive for a touchdown, that's what it is. Electric Pitch has Pitch flying around like a remote-controlled plane, and Electric Coup rings down lightning. Kirby takes Pitch along and slams him into the ground all over the place because it's hilarious. Eventually, Pitch needs a break and Kirby dodges Connie and crushing traps with Gooey. Next, the pair get into the volcano proper and have to avoid lava and lots of fire-breathing galbos. Next, they find a door that leads to Caramello's playroom. Caramello's a giant chick with an eggshell over their head. They want to play a game, and that game is guess how many Gordos make a certain face. So Caramello pops some bubblegum and it surprises some Gordos, and Kirby and Gooey have to correctly count how many react in a certain way. It takes a few tries, but eventually Kirby and Gooey correctly guess this all, and this makes Caramello happy. By the way, Caramello's name is based on Calamaro, a Japanese-Italian animation. After the game, Kirby and Gooey head to the next part of the volcano and they encounter a new enemy called Magoo. This enemy is lava incarnate. They pop out of the lava and attack Kirby and Gooey. They just look like a lot of dark fire, and they're scary. With Bobos, Magoos, and Wapods everywhere in the lava, Kirby and Gooey have a scary time getting through. Then as they climb out of the volcano, Kirby feels himself in the area again. Pushing forward, the duo has to deal with falling enemies in the sand falls. Eventually they make it through and run into Caramello, who was so happy from their game that they manifest a heart star for the duo to take. In case you weren't getting the hint or you didn't see the YouTube side, that familiar thing was another Batamon, or the same one, who knows. In the fourth level, Kirby and Gooey encounter the craziest thing. Chili in the desert? Kirby has been fighting Chili ever since his first big adventure. Overcoming their confusion, Kirby and Gooey absorb Chili to gain ice powers and later fight Marios with ice. The pair then find Rick, Nago, and Pitch and try out ice powers with them. Rick makes a kind of snowman, Nago does a cold hot air balloon thing, and with Pitch, they can make an ice crank machine. After enough playing, the pair continue forward. They encounter lots and lots of Marios and Popons in the desert, and it is a long slog of dealing with them as they ascend and descend the desert. Eventually they get deeper in and have to deal with Ticks and Bronto Birch in tight quarters. Then they swim through a dirty, sandy underground and have to deal with seer enemies, but they're no match for the sea urchins Kirby and Gooey. Then they face off against Hoboki, the mid-boss. Side note, I have no idea if there's an indication how to get to Hoboki the first try. It feels like you have to just get lucky or look it up because it's a hidden door that is just a pain in the butt to find. So Hoboki is it's a broom. It's a big giant broom that tries to clean up Kirby and Gooey out of the desert. Hoboki fights by sweeping at Kirby and jumping at him. They're very easy to beat though. By the way, Hoboki was in the Kirby anime pilot. After defeating Hoboki, the pair find a small blue-haired child named Donbei, and he's looking for his sister, Hikari. Kirby holds them in his mouth as he ventures forward to look for her. They climb out of the sand, and now it's night outside, and the pair face more enemies rushing at them like Bobo, Bronto Bert, Rocky, and Togezo. Kirby then finds an invincibility candy, and they sugar rampage across all the way to the end where they find Hikari. Overjoyed with being reunited, Hikari manifests a heart star for Kirby to collect, and they move on. In the fifth level, Kirby and Gooey end up on some colorful rock plateau and have to fight Dogon. It appears the pair have ended up in the Stone Age again as Kirby crushes them with his rock ability. Then Kirby rolls over a bunch of Wapods. Kirby's in the groove now. Then he finds Rick and the party gets even crazier with Kirby running on Rock Rick to bowl over more enemies. They dominate until they get to a bunch of spike rock drops. Then they fall down a big deep hole and Kirby loses track of Rick for a minute, but he finds him at the bottom literally chilling with chilies. Gooey grabs him and they use Rick and the ice ability to get some goodies. Then the trio end up getting chased by a boulder and they desperately run to survive. They then tag out Rick to give him a rest and team up with Choo-Choo and run from more boulders. But it's way easier with Parasol since Kirby and Choo-Choo can move quickly and dangerously in that form. Next they switch to flying mode with the cleaning ability and avoid a bunch of Kaboos rushing at them. After a bunch of flying up and up and up to avoid and defeat more enemies, the trio make their way out and they run into Choo-Choo's best friend Neopon, the octopus. She's similarly shaped as Choo-Choo, but she has a white sailor hat with a pink ribbon and she's yellow. Neopon came to make sure her friend is safe, and so seeing her friend makes a heart star manifest. Kirby collects it and lets Choo-Choo stay with Neopon to chat a bit before they move on. So this is an interesting thing. Kirby and Choo-Choo are very cute and very flirty together in this game, so it's hard to know what the relationship is. Same with Choo-Choo and Neopon. In future content, we see things that hint Choo-Choo and Neopon might be girlfriends. Specifically, there was an artwork for the 25th anniversary of Kirby and it had characters making cookies for Valentine's Day. Nago's girl has a cookie for him, Rick's girl has a cookie for him, and we see Choo-Choo making a cookie of Neopon. Also, you'll notice the fifth level is always a female character that is important to an animal friend. Grassland was Kind's wife, Ripplefield was Pitch's mama, this time's Neopon, and the next two times will be Rick's girlfriend Pick and Nago's love interest Shiro. Ultimately, unless something confirms anything, we can only guess. In the sixth level, the trio ventures toward a big scary pyramid. The trio fight their way in by overcoming many Petarons and Dokas, and then they make their way in. Inside the pyramid is weird. There's lots of crazy swirls in the surrounding area and boulders falling to get in the trio's way. But they make their way through and they get to the center and it's like they're underwater. In there, they find a Z-bomb that leads them to different sections of the pyramid. After a long period of getting lost, they find their way to the top of the pyramid by climbing a bunch of platforms. In a green area, and find a robot head. He says his name is Rob and he'd like to see his creator, Professor Hector. Kirby doesn't know who that is, but he takes the head with him and eventually finds the exit in the east. There they find Professor Hector, and he asks Kirby to please reassemble Rob. So Kirby turns around to get to the rest of the pieces. Choo-Choo left the party early to call the other animal friends over, so this one looks like it's gonna be an all-hands-on-deck situation. Kirby returns to the pyramid from where he first came in the western section, and decides that he needs to first go to the southeast section. There the pyramid background is red, and Kirby finds a current he can't overcome. So Kirby goes south next, and there he finds all 8 Bukasets, who has all the 8 abilities, and all of his animal friends there too, all 6 of them. Turns out Choo-Choo convinced the Bukasets to come train at the pyramid, and she was able to gather all the animal friends too. So it looks like all possible tools are available for Kirby to use to figure out this pyramid. So he grabs Kind and heads back into the southeast section, and swims against the current. There he gets a robot arm. Kirby keeps Kind with him and takes him to the northwest section with the electric ability. This is because when Kirby was wandering around the first time, it was a gray area and very dark, and Kind with Kirby makes a light bulb. This should be very useful. And it is! With the help of the light bulb, the trio are able to find the correct path through 5 areas, and this leads them to finding Rob's body. 2 pieces down and who knows how many more to go. Kirby remembers an area that required fighting wind currents, so Kirby goes and finds Ku to help him. Together they go to the southwest side and it's a brown area. After some puzzling, they get to the wind currents, and they're able to beat it, and they're able to get Rob's other arm. Next, Kirby grabs Pitch and they go northeast, which is purple. There they fight with other training Bukasets and puzzle their way through another section, eventually finding Rob's upper body. They've now completed all of Rob, so they head east, but the danger isn't over. They find themselves face to face with Pelu for the first time. Kirby gives Pitch a break and runs through with Gooey. Pelu is a super creepy creature that has just 2 eyes, a mouth, and a tongue. They attack Kirby with their tongues while cannonballs and spike rocks fall at them too. It's a lot, but eventually Kirby is able to get outside and jump over a dozen Shotzos and finally reunite Rob with Professor Hector, fully rebuilt. This makes him happy and a heart star manifests, and Kirby grabs it and moves on. Rob, of course, is someone all Nintendo fans should know by now, but you wouldn't have known them back then when the game came out. Super Smash Bros. Brawl doesn't come out for another 10 years after freaking Kirby's Dream Land 3. Rob was an NES accessory that was released in 1985, and it was groundbreaking time because you would use the game controller to control a real-life toy robot named Rob. It was pretty cool. With nearly all of the desert combed, Kirby and Gooey and the animal friends find the source of darkness in a cave. Kirby and Gooey do a 2v2 fight against Pon and Con, who attack them with their army of little friends. This is Kirby's first confrontation with his fox and raccoon pair. It takes a lot of sucking up their enemies, friends, and dodging, but eventually Kirby and Gooey overcome Pon and Con and their armies. With the pair knocked out cold, the Heart Stars from earlier come together and purify the land and the furry duo. Then everyone heads to Cloudy Park. There, Kirby and Nago play for a while in ball form, but then Pitch shows up as a ball and Nago goes to play with them. Nago enjoys playing with balls, it seems. Kirby gets mad and runs after them since they ditched him, but then he runs into Gooey and they go back into the investigation. In the first level, they start at the top of a mountain in the clouds. Up there they find Keke, Waddle Dee, and Cappies. Pretty surprised to see the Cappies up there. Kirby finds Rick, and with the cleaning power, they run around with a duster to clean the mountain. They also encounter the floating menace Scarfy. They look happy at first, but as usual, they surprise Kirby with an angry face. The trio then deals with highs and lows as they dodge Gordos and bone attacks from Gabons. It's pretty tough, but they get through. Then after more climbing and dealing with Galbos and boulders chasing them, the trio make it to a door while Kirby feels himself nearby again. Yep, it's Batamon for the 3rd time. Kirby still hasn't met them, by the way. For us, we see a boulder chasing Batamon away, and it's a good thing they make it out safely, because that would suck if they did get crushed. The trio then have to dodge lots of scary Mariols while also running from Shotzo cannonballs. Then they climb up higher and have to dodge lots more boulders. They next find themselves in a big cloudy area and they find flowers covered in dust. But thanks to Rick's duster usage of the cleaning ability, they're able to clean the flowers and this makes them all happy. For helping their friends, a flower named Hibana Modoki expresses joy and it manifests a heart star for Kirby to collect. In the second level, the trio starts in the clouds. Up in the cold clouds, they see Chili, and Kirby uses it with Rick to make a snowman kind of attack. With the ice powers, they decimate the sky, and Kirby tries out his ice powers with some animal friends. With Choo-Choo, he becomes a snowball-making machine. With Pitch, he makes an ice maker like we saw before, and with Nago, he becomes a cold air balloon, which is pretty weird. Kirby decides to tag in Choo-Choo and moves on. So Rick gets a nice break. With the snowball-making attack, lots of enemies get frozen and pushed forward to wreck more enemies. Then they try out electricity with Choo-Choo, and she gets a laser gun tentacle attack. Eventually Choo Choo gets tired and needs a break while Kirby and Gooey continue to run and float forward through the clouds. After going through dozens, almost 100 enemies, Kirby and Gooey find a baby chick named Pio hanging from a balloon. Kirby uses the needle ability to free them, and they find the chick's mama. The mama chick named Keko is so happy she manifests a heart star and Kirby grabs it and moves on. Their names are onomatopoeias. Pio is what chick chirps in Japanese, while Coca-Coco is what a rooster crows, which, sure. In the third level, Kirby and Gooey find themselves running around on rain clouds. They then encounter Mopos, which are kind of jumpy worm cloud creatures. They're a little too happy to meet Kirby as they aggressively hop at him, but Gooey licks them up to stop them. Eventually the pair find an area in the clouds so soaked with rain that Kirby and Gooey can swim through it. Now that's a lot of rain. They also encounter Loud the Cloud again and make fun of their name, so much that Loud never bothers Kirby ever again. And I mean ever. This is the last level they're in. After some Z-bonding around, Kirby and Gooey meet Tamasan, a creature made of 3 balls. 1 yellow, 1 red, and 1 blue. Their name literally means sphere in Japanese. They play a game where yellow, blue, and red Gordos appear, and Kirby and Gooey have to correctly guess how many there were for 3 rounds. After half a dozen tries and struggling to count without fingers, the pair correctly count how many there are, and this makes Tamasan impressed, and happy at their persistence. After running through even more clouds, so many that even the camera can't see, the pair find a happy Tamasan who manifests a heart star, and the Kirby takes it with him. In the fourth level, the pair find themselves in a gigantic tornado filled with Passeras, which makes the place flooded with them as Kirby and Gooey hit them. They then face strong winds and know they'll probably need Ku, so they bring him along. Grabbing Ku and the Parasol ability is the right choice. With Parasol they're able to fight anything, and with Ku they're able to fight the strong wind that pushes them along. This is very smart on their part because there's a whole army stuck in this tornado too. Gabons, Wapods, Togezos, Scarfies, and so many more. The journey through the tornado was so long and perilous, but thanks to Ku and the Parasol ability they safely make it their way through. It's especially helpful in the wind corridors, but then they encounter Mumbies, one of Kirby's oldest enemies. They face Kirby since his first day in Dreamland. These big wrapped balls are always chasing Kirby when they see him, and with all those strong winds, Kirby ends up flying into lots of them. Mumby shows up in the Kirby Right Back at Ya anime episode 84, Mumby's Madness. He's really scary there. Kirby can't tell if he's shivering with fear or from the cold winds, but eventually he makes it through. It helps that he and Ku frantically spun to survive. It did make them dizzy, of course. Then they end up fighting Jumper Shoot, a mid-boss Kirby hasn't seen since his last adventure with his animal friends. Jumper Shoot is a big umbrella with 1 big eye and a mouth and 1 foot. They're really weird looking. They're based on the Japanese spirit Kasa Obake, but Kirby and Ku with the Parasol ability tear him into pieces, because of course they do. Turns out this boss is holding a little sentient orange hostage, but thanks to Ku's ability to fly, they're able to overcome the winds and save the orange named Mikarin. Obviously a play on the word Mikan for orange. The trio then make their way up and out of the tornado, but not before they fight Wappa, which is a walking snow monster. They're not really hard to deal with since this hardened trio has been doing so well, and after all this they find Mikarin's friend Kagami Mochi, which is a sentient Kagami Mochi, which is a rice cake. The pair are happily reunited and manifest a heart star. The trio collect that and move on before Kirby gets any hungry ideas. In the 5th level, everything's pink and smells sweet. The trio handedly breeze through for a while, but eventually they give Ku a break from all the flying and tag in Rick. As they progress, they encounter for the first time Klinko, which is a little hopping wood broom guy. They look weird and Kirby only encounters them on this adventure. The journey through with Rick is perilous because he can't fly, but thanks to Gooey's short-range warping ability and Kirby's platforming skills, they get through a lot. The most impressive feat is when they do a quad jump on some Wapod. Then after lots of jumping around with Rick, the trio run into Rick's girlfriend, Pick the hamster. He looks like Rick, but she's pink and has a cute red bow on her head. She came to check up on him, and she's relieved to see he's okay. This manifests a heart star, and Kirby grabs it. He then leaves Rick with his girlfriend and moves on with Gooey. So this stage is supposed to be a big platforming skill check, but if you play 2 players, you can just skip through easily by having Kirby fly ahead, and Gooey carry Rick. We quickly breeze through it to get it over with for the game footage-wise, but I went back to do a single player, and oh boy is it not easy. It's weird to get a strong platforming skill check after mostly simple levels. In the 6th level, Kirby and Gooey find themselves in some kind of cloud cage. They see drawings all over the place as they go, and Kirby thinks the artist is really good. These drawings are very lifelike. Then they end up fighting for the first time Madu, a floating mage. More than avoiding than fighting. The mage shoots down at them and destroys blocks. Kirby and Gooey trick them into shooting the blocks they need to leave, and then they're able to get out. But before they do, Kirby gobbles them up, because of course he does. So Madu only shows up in this game, by the way. Kirby and Gooey then have to trick another Madu to press forward, and then they meet HB007, who looks like an upside-down glass in shape. Kirby studies their body closely because he remembers what happened with HB002. The pair run and dodge a bunch of Mapus, and after a couple tries, the pair create the shape they need in a 5x5 star block field, but right side up. They then move on and have to run from a bunch of Kamoses, and then deal with another Madu, which leads to a bit of a maze. It takes a couple tries, but they get through. Then they encounter Buku sets with breakable bricks behind them, leading to good stuff. They did this to make Kirby face them since they want to train after all. Kirby obliges and defeats them all, then he deals with a fourth Madu. This gimmick is very interesting for a minute, but now Kirby just wants to go already. After Madu, they find the exit to the cage and see more wall paintings, but this time they come to life and attack! The pair are totally shocked, but they make it through and reach HB007, who is happy to see them, and manifests a heart star for Kirby to grab and move on. So of course, HB007 is another Mario Picross reference, and this time it's level 7 on easy and it looks like a wine glass. Kirby and his friends follow the art into a cloud because they sense darkness from the art, and Kirby and Gooey find a canvas. Then out pops Ado and she's ready to paint them into a fight. Apparently Ado was around during Kirby's last adventure with his animal friends because she summons the Ice Dragon, Sweet Stuff, Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright, Kracko, and then herself. All of her paintings were bosses from the last adventure. Alternatively, you could argue she's going off Dark Matter Swordsman's memories, since he used them in the Dreamland 2, and Dark Matter has the Swordsman's memories, and Ado was able to tap into that. It's an answer, but convoluted as heck. So first, Kirby and Gooey take on the Ice Dragon, who is a cute blue and white little dino dragon baby. It spits up ice cubes that can be shot back, and it rushes at the pair with its big body. After defeating them with their own ice, the pair have to face Sweet Stuff, the anglerfish. It jumps around and at times shoots balls of electricity and physical sea stars. The sea stars are used to defeat the fish, of course. Then comes Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright, and they take turns running across the field while the other rains down attacks. Those attacks are what's used to defeat them, of course, with Kirby. Then comes Kracko, Kirby's eternal hater, and they have the biggest variety of attacks as usual. They can swoop at Kirby, shoot lightning beneath itself, throw mini Krackos at Kirby, and generally chase after the pair. After a long and hard fight, the pair had to face Ado, who is frustrated they defeated her art. As she's about to make her attack on Kirby, Gooey knocks her over and the poor girl faints. While she's out, the Heart Stars come out and purify the area, and Ado too, of course. This is easily the most fun fight since it's got so many moves to deal with, but it is a big long fight that sucks if you get beat at Kracko and have to start over. Also, it's really long if you don't have any abilities to use against them. So a lot to talk about here with these characters in this fight. Ice Dragon first appeared in Dreamland 2 and also appears in the anime Kirby Right Back at You, episode 20, Dedede Snow Job. Kirby kills him horribly in that episode. Also, it's one of the sad episodes because it ends with Chili's death, despite Kirby's best efforts to save them. We'll see an Ice Dragon again many times. Sweet Stuff is from Dreamland 2 as well, and also appeared in the Kirby anime pilot. We will only see Sweet Stuff again in 2 more games. Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright have been around since Kirby's adventure, and they'll be around in many future games. They're also in the anime, but kind of as a reference. In episode 9, The Fofa Factory, the two are used as weapons for a monster named Slice and Splice. Kracko is of course Kirby's biggest hater, and they show up in almost every single game to fight Kirby. They show up in episode 4 of the Kirby Right Back at You anime, and in that, Kirby almost dies, but eventually cuts Kracko in half to kill them instead. Ado is a cute little artist girl with a green outfit and a red beret. Whether she later becomes Adeline or not is up to debate for some people, but at this point I'm convinced she is. We'll talk about the evidence for that in Kirby 64's episode. So with another area purified, Kirby and his friends head to the 5th and final area, giving off a dark matter vibe. The Iceberg area. Arriving in Iceberg, everyone decides to make a snowman. Nago brings the first big snowball, Choo-Choo pats it while resting on Kirby's head. Choo-Choo and Kirby then run off to grab something while Nago brings a smaller second snowball. Pitch rests on the balls while Gooey walks up and to see what's going on. Pitch then leaves but drops the snowball on Gooey, which encapsulates him. Kirby and Choo-Choo come back with a hat and they put the smaller snowball back up. Choo-Choo then puts a hat on it and Nago comes with a shovel, but then Gooey's eyes and tongue pop out and it freaks out Nago and Choo-Choo. Kirby's just amused. After enough playing, everyone goes out to investigate. In the first level, Kirby and Gooey start out at the bottom of a snow cliff and encounter lots of Kekos and Klinkos. Eventually they see some Waddle Dees because Waddle Dees are everywhere. They then climb into an ice cave and have to fight their way through Rockies, Galbos, and Cosmoses. They were surprised to see Galbos since those are fire creatures after all. But then again, they did see chili in the desert, and they guess some creatures don't care about temperature. After a long ascent, the pair find frozen flowers. So Kirby eats a Bobo to gain fire powers, and goes about saving the flowers by thawing them. Kirby's very careful to not damage the flowers while doing this, of course. After thawing them all, Kirby heads deeper into the blizzards and takes on lots of chilies, among other things. After lots of trudging through the thick snow, they meet a representative of the flowers named Kogoeso. This required, like 12 tries by the way, which is Kogoeru in Japanese translates to be frozen, and so to be appearing frozen. That is a very on-the-nose name and very hard to say. They thank Kirby and generate a heart star for him to collect, and he does just that. Kirby and Gooey go from one snow peak to another, and they can tell something feels very alien here, but different from the dark matter situation. It's weird! Kirby and Gooey steamroll through a bunch of Nrups and Waddle Dee, and then have to run from a dark cloud of snow chasing them. The snow cloud comes very close to consuming them, but they get away by rushing into the mountain. But they find the mountain is actually a volcano! And it is very, very hot. Kirby and Gooey do find Nago and Pitch in there, and they take Pitch along because his ice-making ability, it'll help cool them down real good for sure. Then they encounter something crazy. It's a weird-looking see-through flying jellyfish. It grabs onto Kirby's skulls and sucks, but fortunately Kirby's head is too full of food to be penetrated. They freeze it and then thaw it in the lava. It's very dead now. But then they find two more and they latch onto Kirby and Gooey this time. Luckily Gooey has no thoughts to steal and Kirby is still too hard to penetrate since it's full of food. The two creatures get frozen and thrown into the lava as well. Kirby doesn't like these things, but knows it's important to deal with problems head on. They then find three more of these things and Gooey goes in as a decoy. The creatures steal nothing from Gooey and Kirby takes them down with Pitch's help. Then the trio senses no more of these creatures nearby, but they do sense something else. The trio push forward towards whatever it is. They can sense it is very strong, so they tread carefully. After fighting their way through Pactos and propellers, more like being tasted by Pactos, they get back out of the volcano and back in the snow. They again have to run from the scary snow cloud and it is very touch and go. The cloud almost takes over them multiple times, but Pitch pushes Kirby through to safety. Kirby can only hope Pitch made it too. But no time for that now, they've found the source of the power. It's a beautiful woman in a power suit. Kirby senses no ill will from her and approaches. She came looking for the creatures Kirby defeated. They're known as Metroids and she's thankful they didn't hurt Kirby or anyone else. The relief manifests into a heart star. Kirby and Gooey get to know the woman known as Samus and wave by as they head back into their investigation of dark matter. They don't ask Samus for help, they figure she has her own problems to deal with, and Kirby hopes to someday meet her again someday, and he would in Super Smash Bros. In the third level, Kirby and Gooey head to some ice floes. Kirby and Gooey slip around on the ice floes and eat some chilies. They then have to deal with giant snowballs being rolled at them by Korori. This little troublemaker just wants to crush people with giant snowballs. What a rude first meeting. Kirby freezes them and sends them away. Korori is basically a little penguin with a beanie hat. They're very cute. They also won't show up again in Kirby games until 25 years later in Forgotten Land. That is how deep a cut that penguin is in that game. Kirby really sends them off, I guess. Kirby then teams up with Ku, who is able to use the ice ability to do a Tri-Ice attack to freeze lots of Petarans who are trying to kill them. After lots of flying around with Ku, Kirby gives them a rest and swims under the floes. Here they encounter some Waddle Dees with rafts, Kapars, and Blippers. After lots of swimming, the pair eventually make their way out of the water and find themselves on crumbling snow. After a bunch of falling around, they find their way to Rick and Kine. They grab Kine and push forward since there's probably more water to contend with. Turns out they're wrong. Instead, it's a minigame with Chef Kawasaki. He drops Gordos that make different sounds, and they have to correctly choose the Gordo that matches the sound of the Gordo with Chef Kawasaki. It takes some really good hearing, but eventually the trio get them all right. I would hate to play this as a deaf person, right? This makes Chef Kawasaki very happy and they move on. After swimming through a lot of freezing water with Kine, they find Chef Kawasaki and he manifests a heart star because he's so happy from the minigame. The trio grab it and move on to the other side of the ice floes. In the fourth level, the trio make their way to an ice shelf and Kirby and Kine Mario their way across the first section. Kirby then gives Kine a break and runs along while dodging a bunch of falling Wappas. After that, the duo take their turn falling and having to avoid fire-breathing Galbos. It's pretty rough. But eventually they find Ku hidden behind some ice and move on. With Ku, they fly by a bunch of scary floating ice rocks and falling icicles, but it isn't easy since there's so many. Then the trio has to avoid big snowballs in narrow spaces because Korori really wants to crush them, but fortunately they make it through quickly thanks to Ku's flying speed. Next they have to avoid scary Pactos though. This whole level's really rough. Eventually they melt their way across a bunch of ice blocks, and it's pretty fun for them to blaze through. They then find a door that mysteriously has plants growing from it, so they go there and find Choo Choo! With the power of fire, they hot balloon their way up some ice, and then with the power of Ku, they burn down some more ice, and then use Choo Choo to burn more ice. Thanks to help with Choo Choo and Ku, Kirby and Gooey find a shell that is calling to them, but then they encounter Yuki, the ice blob, who wants to shell for themselves. So Kirby and Gooey take them on while Choo Choo rests from getting lit up a while ago. Yuki has 3 attacks. They hop at Kirby and make ice balls to hit them with, they throw small Yukis which can be shot back, and they ram attack Kirby and lose their head, which can be used to shoot back at them. Eventually they're defeated, and Kirby and Gooey avoid a bunch of Gabons who are throwing bones at them in the next room, then Caboose and Decaboos, and lastly an onslaught of Babots, Nerfs, and Sasuke's flying at them. This level's really, really tough. But finally, the pair make their way to a snail named Nametsumuri and give them the shell. The happy snail manifests a heart star and Kirby grabs it and moves on. The pair make their way to another ice shelf and find themselves immediately fighting all the Bukaset Knights, since they're training here together. They eventually find Rick and have to deal with lots of Gordos and Glunks. Then lots of Sasuke's. Every room was very dangerous as Kirby and friends deal with the squads of enemies. They avoid a bunch of Wapods, then a bunch of ticks. This area must be King Dedede's barracks, Kirby thought. Then he gives Rick a rest as he moves forward with Gooey to avoid a dozen falling blocks. Then it's an army of Poppy Bros Juniors, followed by Tokezos and then Scarfies. Kirby and Gooey are demolishing King Dedede's army completely. But then they encounter 7 Shotzos and are able to avoid all the volleys somehow. Next, Kirby grabs Ku and they fly through more of King Dedede's army like Yaban, Propellers, Bobbin, Petarens, and more. Seriously, there's 32 different enemies in this whole place, and Kirby has to fight through multiples of all of them, so Kirby's fighting literally hundreds of enemies in this one level. But then again, Kirby feels a presence that feels like himself, but he does not meet them again. It's Batamon again, of course. Kirby then tags in Choo-Choo and they make lots of snowballs to throw around. After dealing with even more enemies like Nido, Keke, and Living Drawings, Joe the Shark, Kapars, and extremely rare Parans, which only shows up in this level and level 4 of Grassland and never again in any Kirby game ever. Then they run into Mumbies, then the trio encounter Zebons and Pasara. Finally, after all that, they find Shiro the White Cat, who is Nago's lover. But Nago's nowhere to be found, so the trio go back to the last area to find him, and then make their way all the way through that entire barracks, again, poor barracks, and get Nago to Shiro, who happily manifests a heart star for Kirby to collect. So that's right, you have to go through all of level 5 to discover Nago isn't even in the level, then go back to a previous level, grab him, then go through that entire onslaught again to get a heart star. Some heart stars are a real trial to deal with. Like, this is one of the failings of Shimomura's games, is some of these things are a little obtuse as heck. And, I don't know, it's more annoying than clever to me. So now all that's left before confronting King Dedede is his current generals. Looks like these boys will be running the gauntlet today. Kirby and Gooey gird their loins and climb up level 6 as they dodge tons of nerfs. Kirby finds and teams up with Ku first and progresses to fight a bunch of Sparkies and gaining their power to find a mysterious feather. They collect it and then they face off against General Blocky. They somehow show lightning works on rocks and then Gooey eats them to gain the stone ability. And with this, they find another mysterious feather. Then they take on General Jumpershoot, who should be able to handle a lightning storm from Kirby and Ku, but ultimately they fail and Gooey eats them too for the Parasol ability. Conveniently, Gooey is able to use it to grab another feather that's hidden behind some blocks. Then they take on General Yuki, and General Yuki can't handle lightning either, and Gooey eats them to gain the ice ability, which is used to find another feather. Kirby is starting to notice a pattern. Then it turns out there's no Cutter General, so 3 Sir Kibbles attack them, and Kirby beats them easily. Gooey eats one for a Cutter ability, and then of course finds another feather. Then the trio tear General Hiboki to pieces, who was just cleaning the area up. Poor fella. Gooey eats them and gets the hidden feather for cleaning. Then they face General Bobu, who can't even reach up to where Ku and Kirby are, so they get hit with lightning and can't do anything about it. Poor fella. And Gooey, of course, eats them for the fire ability to get another feather. Turns out that Ku and Kirby are very broken with lightning ability, and then they finally fight the Captain Stitch, and Captain Stitch is a bit tougher because of the spikes they have, and it does get them some trouble, because he's like Bobu, but he just crashes up and down as well, so eventually he gets hit with the lightning and his own spikes, and then he's eventually defeated. So nothing beats lightning, so how the heck has Kracko never beaten Kirby, right? So Gooey gains spikes from Captain Stitch, and now they have all the feathers as far as they can tell. They then find the owner of the feathers, and it's a cute angel who needed the feathers to remake her wings, so that's cool. She has blonde hair, a little halo, and a ribbon, and she thanks Kirby and friends for finding her feathers, which allows her to have her wings back like I said. She manifests a heart star and Kirby moves on thinking Gooey would grab it since he gathered all the feathers. But crucially, Gooey forgets to grab the heart star. Assuming all is well behind them, Kirby and crew push forward to confront the maniacal King Dedede. But something weird is going on. King Dedede sleeping? And sleep attacking them! Kirby and crew scramble and face off against the sleep-fighting King Dedede. He proves unpredictable with his high jumping attacks, jumping hammer slams, and sucking attacks. The jumping attacks leave stars for Kirby to use if he doesn't have a copy ability. It takes Kirby and friends multiple attacks to defeat the king, but eventually they do. At least they thought they did. But then King Dedede does something Kirby didn't know he could do. Fly! Not only does King Dedede fly, but he does it with his belly opening up and trying to eat Kirby and Gooey. Then sometimes an eye would appear to shoot Dark Blasts at the pair. Those Dark Blasts are the only way Kirby can fight back if he loses his copy ability, by the way. It's a frightening side of body horror that Kirby didn't know King Dedede was capable of. It takes the pair even more tries, but eventually they overcome sleeping horror King Dedede. The darkness fades within King Dedede, so Kirby and Gooey think they're done and do a dance over the unconscious King Dedede. Assuming he's learned his lesson, everyone leaves and heads home. As they leave, Kirby and Gooey think about all their friends they had with them and all the enemies they faced. We're then treated to the credits where we see every single enemy in the game named, minus the bosses. But then we're shown that one enemy remains, and it's floating in the sky and has a giant eyeball. Kirby then wonders what the heart stars were for and says he figured something would happen after Gooey grabbed the last one from the angel. Gooey tilts his head in confusion. Then it dawns on Kirby he should have double-checked if Gooey grabbed it. So they turn around and run all the way back to King Dedede's castle and find the angel, and she's just been hanging out there with her heart star. Kirby grabs it and decides to double-check on King Dedede. Turns out he didn't learn any lesson because he's still sleeping and he attacks them again in his sleep. After another difficult fight, they beat the stuffing out of King Dedede again, and this time, like with other boss fights, the heart stars come together and purify King Dedede's castle. This leads to the revelation that King Dedede was being possessed. Again! Turns out all the areas they purified forced the dark energy to amass at one point. The Hyper Zone. The sixth and final area in the game. So Kirby flies up with the culmination of the heart stars, which is the Love Stick, and Gooey flies up too in his newly discovered Mock Matter form. Kirby looks and realizes Gooey is one of these things too, but a friendly one. Kirby wonders back to the time he had to fight the Dark Matter Swordsman. His true form was similar to what Gooey looks like. Did Gooey tag along with the Swordsman back then? After all, Kirby found him in a sack back then. Did the Swordsman tie him up for following them? Kirby shook his head from thinking too much. He needs to focus on the battle ahead. Yeah, that's the thing, like, Gooey was in Dreamland too, so I guess you can assume Gooey was tagging along with Swordsman, and then all this stuff happens, and here we are with the second Dark Matter Trilogy game. What's interesting is Dark Matter Swordsman attacks everyone in Dreamland 2 because he's jealous they have friends, but if Gooey tagged along, then doesn't that mean he had a friend? Like, what's going on? In the Hyper Zone, Kirby and Gooey fight something familiar to what Kirby faced in the past, the true form of Dark Matter Swordsman. So this must be another Dark Matter. The last one was dangerous and required a legendary sword, but good thing Kirby has a legendary wand this time. Dark Matter are giant balls of dark energy with one big eyeball and orange ball petals all around them. The Dark Matter floats around and launches deadly dark lightning attacks from its eyeball. Then it releases its petals at Kirby and Gooey, and the petals home in on them as they continue to fight the Dark Matter. Dark Matter only has these two attacks, but they prove difficult if the pair don't keep their distance. Once defeated, the Dark Matter dissipates and Kirby and Gooey breathe a sigh of relief, but then something flashes into existence. A huge white ball with a red eye. As it appears, it bounces Gooey away, calling it a failed lump. This planet was the last place the Dark Matter Swordsman went before it disappeared. That's what brought Zero here. They were conquering other parts of space, but something defeated a Dark Matter, and that means it's a threat, so they came immediately to deal with it. Kirby and Gooey fire off dozens of love attacks while Zero shoots red blasts across at them, and from the background to the foreground. They also launch lots of mini Dark Matters as well. Zero even lunges its large body at them and causing trouble that way as well, with their weight, just throwing it around. Ultimately, the pair remain vigilant, and Zero's eye violently tears from the rest of its body. Blood flies everywhere in the Hyper Zone. The giant body drifts off into the distance as the pair fight the bloody eyeball. The eyeball is completely fixed on Kirby. Kirby uses this to his advantage and flies in circles while Gooey finishes off the eyeball from behind. Eventually, the bloody eyeball explodes into a huge mist of blood and the pair are successful. Kirby and Gooey then drift in the Hyper Zone, but then the Love Stick shines brightly, and with lasers of blue, red, and green blasting out, Kirby and Gooey fall back to the Dreamland. There, everyone gathers together to figure out what the heck happened. Kirby and crew learned that everyone was being mind-controlled by the Dark Matter Zero. Everyone was thankful to Kirby and his friends, and they have a big picnic. Ado draws pictures of everyone at the picnic as well. So we see the credits, and there's lots of cute stuff like Ado with everyone, then we see Dedede with some animal friends and Ado as she draws a circle. She then does a good drawing of King Dedede in profile. Then she draws Pon and Con with two kids. Next is drawing of Wispy Woods, followed by a drawing of Acro, a drawing of herself, and lastly drawings of each animal friend in this order: Kine, Nago, Ku, Choo Choo, Pitch, and Brick. Then drawings of Gooey and Kirby, and drawings of the ladies important to the animal friends, and lastly all the bears of the Heart Stars. Minus Samus, since she already flew off, so there was no way for Ado to get a drawing of her. Lastly, she draws Popstar with red, blue, and green rings. So that's right, Popstar's rings are reformed using the light from the Love Stick, and they give out those colors. And then Ado jumps up and paints the word End to signify it's over, and eventually after this game, the rings would of course merge back into the two usual X formation that we see always with Popstar. It's a really cute closer and definitely one of my favorite credits of all time. If I ever do a top 10 credits, it'll be interesting to see where this one lands on that. So that completes the story, but there's a little more if you want to 100% the game. So after you beat the game completely in an adventure, you'll have 97% done. When you choose your save file, you can pick Option to see Sound Test, Super NES MG5, and Boss Butch. Sound Test is well the Sound Test, so that's always fun to play with. And then Super NES MG5 is doing all 5 minigames in one big marathon. We get a cute image of all the minigame characters before you start. The 5 minigames can be a bit difficult, especially towards the end, but it feels great when you complete them all. When you finish, you get a scorecard showing where you succeeded and failed, and when you succeed, Kirby looks super confident and happy he won. Getting them all right gets you a percentage point. Then there's Boss Butch. Boss Butch has a drawing of all the bosses together waiting to fight Kirby. This includes Zero, who's the biggest and in the back. This boss rush mode is a huge slog because you are base form Kirby the whole time. No copy abilities, you gotta fight them all using just normal form. And that is a pain in the buns to complete, but is a sense of accomplishment when you finish it all as well. Something cool is that the backgrounds are different in these fights. After you finish Boss Butch, you're treated to another version of the end credits. This time's Ada's drawings are different, and to signify that, when they show with King Dedede and the Animal Friends looking at her drawing, it's an X instead of a circle this time, to show it's going to be different. And we get a really cool drawing of King Dedede, then Pon and Con, but Pon's looking extra round, and then a different kind of painting of Wispy, then a sleeker Acro, a cute and kiddier drawing of Ado, then really good drawings of Kine, followed by a rough draw of Nago, a very realistic draw of Ku, a wicked draw of Choo Choo, a more realistic draw of Pitch, a different drawing of Rick, a scary drawing of Gooey, and a super cute simple drawing of Kirby. Then a very daunting drawing of Dark Matter and another daunting drawing of Zero. And lastly, a crayon drawing of Popstar before the same animation with the colored rings. And this of course earns another percentage. So we're at 99%, and the last game is a surprising game. Jumping! That's it. This is the game you play at the end of every level where you jump onto a thing, but here, there's ticks there, and if you jump on a tick, you get hurt. So the goal is to land on every correct spot until you do about 9 jumps, and if you do, you get the last percentage point. So that's great right there. And you can do this jump as Kirby, or with Gooey, or with any of the animal friends. So getting 100% allows the player to watch all cutscenes in the options section, and there's one cool hidden thing. When you beat Boss Butch, right after beating Zero, hold L, R, and X to get a special image of Kirby standing over all the defeated bosses with the caption, "Perfect!" I love that. The only thing left to mention from the games is the game over screens, so you get one for losing in general and one for each boss fight. These are Kirby with a fruit on his head. When he loses, he looks sad, and that's of course from Wispy. Kirby getting chewed on by Acro and he doesn't look happy. Pon and Con dropping a Gordo on Kirby and he looks in pain. Ado painting Kirby's head while he looks nonplussed. King Dedede squishing Kirby under a hammer, and lastly Dark Matter and Zero standing on top of a flattened Kirby, who was holding a flattened Lub Lub stick. The general game over is super cute as it is Kirby sleeping while all the animal friends crowd around him to protect him. It's very cute. The thing about Kirby is he is potentially invulnerable / immortal for all we know. Kirby always gets knocked out when he runs out of HP, but he just pops off screen. He never dies like other characters do. It's been a running belief for me that Kirby just gets tired and takes a nap and tries again. This continues to seem true since we get Kirby sleeping in every single game over screen, ever. Even with the first Dreamland, Kirby is always sleeping when he's defeated, never dead or anything like that. Section 7. Any other interesting trivia? Oh yeah, Boss Butch in the Japanese version has a title showing Nintendo 16 over it, as a joke about Nintendo 64, since this was up and out by the time this game came out. This is a play on the console name, so N64 was 64 bits, while NES was 8-bit, and SNES was 16-bit. That's it. If you're curious about 32-bit, that was Sega Saturn and PlayStation, which is crazy to learn. Now, because Kirby's Dreamland 3 came out at the end of SNES's life, it was never released in Europe or Australia until the Virtual Console 2009. This is one of many factors as to why the game never did well in sales. It is the only mainline Kirby game to not break 1 million sales. A random difference between the US and Japanese version is the difference of 41 bytes. Both versions of the game are on all cartridges, by the way. That extra 41 bytes tells the game which version it is. So you can change those bytes and do the other version. Something interesting is Kirby never ever meets Batamon. Batamon appears in rooms near, but never connecting to Kirby's room. It's a random thing they did, and I wonder what that does to the lore for some people. Something great is that there are Kirby manga based on Kirby's Dreamland 3, so you get more cute characterizations of characters, and interactions between characters like Nago and his girl, and Kine and his wife, and so on. Unfortunately, none of it is translated, so I have no idea how funny it is, or any lore that might be in there for fun. Of course, the mangas are probably non-canon, of course. Last trivia is that this is the only game where Parasol copy ability doesn't have a Waddle Dee or Waddle Doo holding a parasol. That is a crazy thing, because I noticed that, look, no parasol, Waddle Dee, Waddle Doos, what the heck? Alright, Section 8, the credits. I actually really enjoyed this section because it's interesting to see where people's careers intersect with Kirby. Did they stick around and become lifelong Kirby people, or move on to other things, better or worse? We'll go over these in order from the credits in-game, because that's the easiest way to do it. So first up is the director, Shinichi Shimomura. They are a mystery in the present. They are the father of the Dark Matter trilogy, starting with Kirby's Dreamland 2. They also worked on map design for Dreamland 2. The first game was Hyperzone. Then they worked on Kirby's Adventure, Pinball Land, and Dream Course as map designer before landing the director role. They were also a mapper under Sakurai for Kirby Superstar before directing Kirby's Dreamland 3 and Kirby 64 to complete the Dark Matter trilogy. Their final game is Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland before they disappeared forever. Rumors are they retired or died in 2003. By the way, Hyperzone was their first game, and that's the name of the final area in Dreamland 3, the Hyperzone, so that's interesting there. One thing to note is there are business people who believe the reason why he retired was because everyone was getting promotions at this time, and he didn't, so he retired in protest. That's the theory at the moment, and maybe. The chief programmer was Tadayuki Gunji. We talked about him before. He started as a programmer for Kirby's Adventure and then did Dream Course before Superstar. He'll program a few more times before becoming a project manager. His last project was Picross 3D Round 2 in 2015, with Abe being project manager of everything Kirby while he was manager of Picross. He was also the director of Picross 3D in 2009. This and Kirby 64 are the only times he was chief programmer. But then we have three programmers. First up, Tetsuya Abe. We've seen him before as a programmer for Kirby's Adventure and Dream Course. He started with HAL in 1988 doing Agerland, which is a Lolo game. He'll program a few more Kirby games before becoming project manager, which is still his role to this day. He was project manager of Kirby Star Allies in 2018, and then became localization manager. He started becoming project manager in Kirby's Canvas Curse, and he was only chief programmer once, and that will be Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. Isao Takahashi did lots of programming under HAL starting with Superstar. They become production assistant over many games and eventually the project manager for Kirby's Fighters 2. Their career is actually very varied since last time I looked them up. They did art and graphics for many games on various consoles like the PS2. They did the background design for Silent Hill in 1999. They're one of those legendary people. They will be programming many Kirby games in the future and even director of programming for Kirby's Dream Collection. Something I did not know is they were the director of Demon's Souls 2020 and the director of Knack 2. This is crazy. They wrote scripts and did quality assurance and movie production too. Also worked on the Siren series and Gravity Rush. This man has had a career everywhere. That is wild. Katsuhiro Sakota is the last programmer here, and they are a newcomer to Kirby but not to HAL. The first game of the company is Vegas Stakes, back when HAL didn't only do Kirby games. Imagine Vegas Stakes now having Kirby as a dealer, that would have been interesting. So their second HAL game is Kirby's Dreamland 3, and then they'll get promoted to chief programmer for Kirby Superstar Stacker, before going back to regular programmer for a couple more Kirby games. They eventually become the program manager for Kirby's Air Ride and do technical support for Kirby Star Allies and Blow Up Blast before becoming team support for all Kirby games post Super Kirby Clash in 2019. They're also a programmer for Box Boy plus Box Girl, and their current last game is what a lot of people have, and that is Kirby's Dream Buffet. Chief designer was Shigeru Hashiguchi, and their first game was them directing Arcana, an RPG under HAL. They did character designs for Kirby's Adventure and Kirby's Dreamland 2, and they will work on future Kirby games as designer up to Return to Dreamland. After that, they did team support all the way from Kirby's Planet Robobot to Kirby Fighters 2. Then they went to localization for Kirby in the Forgotten Land and Dream Buffet. This dude is a lifetime HAL employee, and Kirby's Dreamland 3 is the only time he gets to be chief designer. There were 6 designers, so let's go. Sanae Kubota, their first game was Kirby's Block Ball. They'll return to work on Kirby 64, Nightmare in Dreamland, Air Ride, Kirby Superstar Ultra, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Canvas Curse as designer in various fashions. This person's career was purely on Kirby games, and good for them. Superstar Ultra would be their last game, and it was as motif designer. Junsuke Sugiura only has 2 game credits, Kirby's Dreamland 3 and Super Smash Bros. As a designer. Well, that's too bad. I hope they had a fun life and whatever else they did. Kenichiro Kita has a heck of a career. Kirby's Dreamland 3 is their first game, and they work on designs for many Kirby games going forward, and they work on all but the first Super Smash Bros. We'll see them in many Kirby games credits. Eventually they'll become a lead designer, starting with Kirby's Triple Deluxe. They're the lead character artist for Kirby's Forgotten Land, so they might be the one to love or blame for any designs you have feelings about. And interestingly, they were in the supervisor role for Smash Brawl and Ultimate. Satoko Nakamura only does 4 Kirby games before moving on to other things. Designed for Kirby's Dreamland 3, Super Smash Bros., Kirby 64, and Kirby's Air Ride. Besides that, they worked on Danganronpa, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Pokemon Ranger. Quite a varied career. And lastly, Yoshiko Okubo only has 3 credits. CG designer for Kirby's Dreamland 2, animation for Kirby's Block Ball, and lastly, this Kirby's Dreamland 3 game. Hope they had a fun life or whatever else they did. The mapper was Tomomi Minami, and first worked on Kirby Superstar's mapper, and again here with Kirby's Dreamland 3. They then become a designer for Kirby and eventually worked on Smash Melee and motif design for various Kirby games. They did motif design for Star Allies. Then was a field artist for Kirby's Dream Buffet. They didn't work on Forgotten Land or anything else in between, so that's curious. The sound composer, of course, is the legendary Jun Ishikawa. He's been with HAL since 1989, and he's worked on nearly every single HAL and Kirby game. It might sound wrong, but you can tell which games he didn't compose songs for because they only have 1 or 2 memorable songs instead of most of them being so good. Think of your favorite Kirby song, very high chance he made it. Think your top 3 songs, guaranteed at least 1 is his. His newest credit is the current newest game, which is Kirby's Dream Buffet. This isn't a dig at Ando, of course. Ando is amazing, but I think he took some time to get there. And of course, the whole new crew, as far as sound goes, is just all incredible. They've all made bangers at this point, so I can't wait to see what games go forward with everyone in general. But here with Dreamland 3, it was just Jun Ishikawa, and this was not his best. And I think that's because, well, this game was sent out to die, kind of, really. The illustrator was Tetsuya Notoya, and they actually started with Kirby's Dream Land as a GDV programmer, and I have no idea what that is. They worked on Arcana, Vegas Stakes, Alcahest, Adventures of Lolo, and Earthbound before going back to Kirby when they worked on Kirby's Avalanche. After that, they don't return until Kirby's Dream Land 3 and then Super Star Stacker. Then they get special thanks for Smash Bros., Pokemon Snap, Kirby 64, Smash Melee, and Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. Then they return to do art for Amazing Mirror, Canvas Curse, Squeak Squad, Super Star Ultra, Epic Yarn, Return to Dreamland, and lastly Dream Collection. Their final credit is another special thanks on Triple Deluxe. Now there's a bunch of special thankses here. First up is Satoshi Ishida, and they're going to be in a ton of special thanks, starting with the new Ghostbusters 2 in 1990. The first Kirby credit is Kirby's Dream Course. They were on the debugging team for Earthbound. They will be in the credits for public relations in many HAL games, so they've been with HAL for decades and mostly get recognized in special thanks. Their newest things are Kirby Star Allies, Super Kirby Clash, and Kirby Fighters 2 and Part-Time UFO for the Switch. Jaco Obakane, same as Ishida, they will be getting a lot of special thanks. First one was Dream Course, also in public relations, and was also on the debugging team for Earthbound. Their newest special thanks is Kirby's Fighters 2. Takahiro Harada has over 50 credits, with most of them being special thanks. This is their first special thanks with Kirby. The first special thanks ever was with Metroid, the original. They were a programmer on Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2. They were the main programmer for Metroid 2. They get special credits in many, many Nintendo games, but only will have special thanks for one other Kirby game, Super Star Stacker. Nodayuki Sato has a very interesting career. They started on printed artwork for Super Metroid and also did artwork on the first Fire Emblem. Kirby's Dream Land 3 is their only Kirby credit. They do illustrations on Nintendo games in 2003, when they get to do game design for various WarioWare games. Then a decade later, they got to be the director of Tomodachi Life of all things. Their last current credit is for Tactics Ogre Reborn, Battle Balance, and Design credit. Jim Warnell got a special thanks in Dream Course Superstar and here in Dreamland 3. He's done the localization with Star Fox 64, artwork for some Nintendo collections, and done the packaging or manuals for many sports games. One can assume he worked on the US manual. The Super Mario Club likely helped whenever HAL may have needed help or guidance. HAL Debug Team, of course, did debugging. The project manager, Ryuki Kareoka, was also the project manager for Superstar, and again, for Star Stacker, Smash Bros. 64, Melee, and Kirby's Air Ride. He'll debug or test some of the 2000s Kirby games. The producer is Hideaki Suga, and they're a longtime HAL employee who started as a sound driver for F1 Race in 1984. HAL was founded in 1980, so he was around the start. He was chief programmer for Kirby's Adventure and will be programmer for the next Kirby Superstar Stacker game. I'm guessing he helped a little while he was working on that. He'll eventually become a producer or supervisor for future Kirby games up to Planet Robobot. The chief producer was the legendary Satoru Iwata. He's the president of HAL at this time, the Superman of programming. You have him to thank for Earthbound and for Pokemon Gold and Silver. He carried HAL on his back with the help of Masahiro Sakurai and Kirby, and Nintendo to bring HAL to where it is now. And then Nintendo before his death from cancer in 2015. He was with HAL from day one, and we'll have to do a separate episode on his life someday, because he was the president of Nintendo as well from 2000 to 2015. He was there for Wii, Wii U, and was spared in the Switch before he passed. The general manager was Takahiro Izushi, and he joined Nintendo as an engineer in 1975. This is his first Kirby credit, but he'll be back for Superstar Stacker. He was producer on many Pokemon and Fire Emblem games. He never comes back to Kirby after Superstar Stacker unless you count Smash Bros. Executive producer was of course Hiroshi Yamauchi. Hiroshi Yamauchi is the president of Nintendo, the man in charge of Nintendo for 52 years. He made Satoru Iwata his successor, which is the first not of his bloodline. He saw Nintendo through from NES to the GameCube. And that's all the credits. There were definitely some interesting people on that list for sure. Alright, final section, my thoughts on the game and where it ranks up. I saved the worst for last, everybody, because I know some of y'all really love this game. I hem and hawed about this game a lot as I was working on it. I'm sorry to everyone who loves this game and has nostalgia for it, but I don't understand why you would be. This game is interesting in a lot of ways, and I love a lot of things about it, but... Kirby 64 is one of my most favorite Kirby games of all time, and in order for it to become the game it was, Dreamland 2 and 3 needed to exist, for Shimamura to learn what worked and what didn't work. I actually like Dreamland 2 over 3 as far as like which one I would rather play, and I know that's going to sound crazy because some people think Dreamland 2 is the worst game of all time, which is nuts to me. As far as puzzles go, Dreamland 2 crawled so Dreamland 3 could walk, so Kirby 64 could run. Dreamland 2 puzzles were a little obtuse, but they weren't that many, so it wasn't so bad. Dreamland 3 has a ton, and some are just terrible. Like, Rob is way too long and way too much work to do. We also got some fun ones like Samus, and I did enjoy the minigames. But making the minigames a source of heart stars can be a real pain in the butt if you're deaf or just bad at minigames. Dreamland 3 has a couple bangers, but just not enough of them. I'm surprised by Jun Ishikawa here. It's not as good as he usually is. The entire game feels stiff, and that's weird because this has amazingly cute aesthetics, and I love the characters. The Animal Friends are some of my favorite characters. Gooey, Rick, Koo, Nago, Pitch. I love these guys a lot. I especially love Choo Choo, and I love her dynamic with Kirby. It's so insanely good. The power mixing is a wonderful idea, but they're so limited since they only have one move. I'm happy the power mixing comes back in 64, and that still is also basically one move, but it's just so creative, so I love it more. But Superstar just did powers better. They set the bar, and it really hurts Dreamland 3 by comparison. Even on its own, without Superstar existing, the power set just feels way too limited. A nice thing, though, is we get a happy mix of all of this, though. We get the power mixing plus multi-move sets, which is the dream people have wanted forever, and that happens in Kirby's Forgotten Land. Takes a long time to get there, but that's wonderful. There are some Kirby content creators I know that love Dreamland 3, and they think it's better than Superstar, and those people are insane. I do not understand. I don't understand at all. Y'all nuts. Y'all are crazy. Superstar beats Dreamland 3 in almost every regard. The AI is even better. You get more helpers. The powers are better. The crayon aesthetic is wonderful, though. I love that crayon aesthetic a lot. I also love the ending credits to Dreamland 3. It's a very good send-off to the game. Look, I was 11 when this game came out, and I played it, and I tried to play it many times, but I kept falling asleep playing Dreamland 3. I was there when it came out, and I could not get through it. The unfortunate problem with Dreamland 3 is it came out too late, and that is probably why it feels so rough. At some point, they knew the game was getting released too late to make a profit, and they didn't finish polishing it. It is good the game exists, because it leads to 64, but oh boy, I did not have a great time with this game. Still, I appreciate where Kirby came from before he soared to even greater heights. Here's the other weird thing is, this is the fastest base speed Kirby ever, and he feels slow in it anyway. And there's a lot of great ideas here. The aesthetic is amazing. The music is serviceable. The stage design, there's some good ideas, and there's a lot of bad ideas. Like, some are just slugs. The puzzles, there's some fun ideas, a lot of bad ideas. The bosses are fun to an extent, but they are very limited as well. The sub-bosses are extremely limited, so they're not that fun at all. I like the Batamon concept. It's such a funny idea to do that. The Animal Friends are wonderful. I think I already said that. The power mixing with them is great. The final boss is a fun final boss. I like it a lot. I think it could have more, though. I'm trying to convince myself to rank this higher right now, because I know so many people love it. But the point of the thing is, you feel what you feel. And I've spent 2 months on this game, no, 3 months actually, with this game, analyzing and overanalyzing it, trying to give it the benefit of the doubt over and over again. And that just made me more miserable, to be honest. So here's the ranking. This is what the ranking was before I talked myself into it right now as well anyway. The ranking is, first, against the main lines, Dreamland 3 is in last place, followed by Dreamland 1, Dreamland 2, Adventure, and Superstar in first place. In the overall game ranking, it is as follows. 11th place, Kirby's Toy Box. 10th place, Block Ball. 9th place, Star Stacker. 8th place, Avalanche. 7th place, Pinball Land. And here it is. 6th place is Dreamland 3. 5th place is Dreamland 1. 4th place is Dreamland 2. 3rd place is Adventure. 2nd place is Dream Course. And 1st place is Kirby Superstar. Yeah, I would rather play Dreamland 1 over Dreamland 3 any day, and I'm sorry about that. I really love the Animal Friends, and I hope they come back someday. More than just a Return to Dreamland cameo, by the way. I want them to actually be things again. Getting 3 of them as Star Allies was cool. I like that a lot. But, I just like to see them again someday. So that is it. That is the entire episode. It is a big one. This took a lot of time to work on. I'm happy I'm done with it. And I know not everyone's going to be happy with this one, but it is what it is. We are different human beings. We have different opinions on things. And I do not have nostalgia for this game like other people do, and I think that does help be a little more objective about it. Next time we'll be going over another Kirby anime episode, Kirby Right Back at episode 51, the episode where Kirby runs away from home. It's the last tearjerker episode, and then we'll get on Super Star Stacker or the 5th light novel before going back and eventually doing Super Star Stacker. By the way, the 5th light novel is really, really, really good, and it's also tearjerkers. There's going to be a lot of tearjerkers right now. And last thing to say is that's it. If you're enjoying the series, please share us with your friends. The more people that enjoy this podcast, the happier we'll all be. We can be found on YouTube, iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and many other podcast platforms. Thank you to Jinx, the editor of these podcasts, who also painstakingly works on all the footage for the YouTube side of things. It's a lot of work. I had fun. I hope you had fun too, and that's what's all about, isn't it? Having fun. Thanks for coming by, and see you next time.